Chapter 25-26. You? The blood elf looked suspiciously at the purple-clothed youth. He seemed to be in disbelief. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Yi Shiwen's strength, but this guy was of unknown origin, so there was no need to talk about strength. He didn't believe in this purple-clothed youth at all, so there was no need to talk about his strength. However, they didn't have anyone who knew about this seal if they didn't look for him at this time. Otherwise, you can also do it if you can. Everyone stared at each other. They didn't have an expert who knew how to seal someone. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any problem since the person who had sealed someone was also a great expert. So, they hadn't followed him. Who would have thought that something would happen? You have to decide quickly. If I'm not mistaken, that little boy should be suffering from a very vicious curse. He'll die in minutes if you don't suppress it in time, the purple-clothed youth said. That purple-robed young man said. Even though they were separated by the carriage, everything was under his control. There are no secrets at all. The blood elf was also struggling. He didn't know what to do. All right, I'll let you in, but don't blame me for being impolite if you can't cure him. The blood elf thought for a moment. The young master will die if no one can save him. So, it's better to make every possible effort and let him try. Then, why are you blocking the way? Make way. The purple-clothed youth walked forward. The knights could only give way. They had already made the decision, so they could only follow it. The purple-clothed youth entered the carriage without a hitch. The green-clothed girl had heard the blood elf commander's words, so she didn't stop him. They went inside to take a look. It was a completely different world inside. It wasn't as small as it looked from the outside. There was a space enchantment inside, so it looked like a small carriage. However, there was a big room inside. There was a bed at the beginning of the room. A little boy who looked about 7 or 8 years old was lying on the bed. His little face was deathly pale. However, his body seemed to be much smaller than an ordinary little boy. He looked like he was only 5 or 6 years old. Children were still in the growing stage, and the difference in size was only 2 years. But at this moment, his little face was covered in runes, as if some kind of power was going to rush out of his body. Those runes were all extremely malevolent and extremely vicious. This purple-robed youth was naturally Yi Shiwen, but he had changed his appearance in order to deceive people. His original appearance was only 50 to 60% similar to his original appearance. At first glance, even acquaintances would find it difficult to recognize him. He didn't know what was going on. Ever since he saw this little boy through the eye of redemption, he had a special feeling of closeness. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so free to meddle in this matter. How is it? Do you have any ideas? The blood elf also entered the carriage and stared at Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if he would instantly turn hostile if Yi Shiwen said that he couldn't do anything. No problem. It's just a small matter. Yi Shiwen nodded lazily, then stepped forward and placed his hand on the little boy's head. The blood elf couldn't help but feel a little nervous when he saw this scene. His entire body tensed up like a cheetah about to pounce on its prey. Whoosh! There was a buzzing sound, and a seal word appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. It was imprinted on the little boy's forehead. Soon, the runes that had originally climbed on the little boy's face faded and disappeared into the depths of his body's core. The little boy's pale face immediately regained its rosy color. The effect was immediate. Really succeeded? The blood elf looked at Yi Shiwen with an unusual expression. In order to resist the runes transformed from this curse, it could be said that many masters were invited, but there was no way. In the end, they could only find a sealing master to barely suppress it. However, that was something that only a master who specialized in sealing could do. Otherwise, he could also do ordinary sealing. Although he wasn't a master who specialized in sealing, with his cultivation level, how could he not do it? It was nothing more than a matter of understanding 100 things. It was just that this curse was too powerful, so he didn't dare to mess around. Nonsense, I can't even do such a simple seal. I might as well just commit suicide. Yi Shiwen didn't hold back and said while rolling his eyes. The blood elf was suddenly speechless. However, he also saw that although the origin of this purple-clothed young man was unknown, he should not be sent by the enemy. Otherwise, it would be really troublesome. This young man's various performances seemed to be unfathomable. Everyone was helpless against the seal, but he solved it easily. Even the blood elf himself couldn't see how strong he was. Thank you for your help, friend. The Yen City Z family will definitely repay you generously. The blood elf cupped his hands and said seriously, I don't really care about a generous reward. I just feel that this child is very pitiful, so I decided to help you. Just consider it as paying the fare. Yi Shiwen said, Please stop before you reach the next city. The blood elf hesitated immediately. Although he was certain that this purple-clothed young man was not sent by their enemies, the consequences would be unimaginable if he were to let him go and the news was leaked. There was no way they could stop them with just a few of them. Yi Shiwen naturally had his own reasons for doing this. He realized that the efficiency of his search was too low. Even if he were to search one by one, it would still be too slow. He might not be able to find the reincarnation grass even after 1,000 years. However, he could entrust others to help him find it. Fortunately, there was also an unfathomable intelligence organization in the Kerfurst Road. The intelligence network of the Heaven Pavilion might even be developed into intelligence agents. The Heaven Pavilion had a very large intelligence network in the heavens and the myriad worlds. It was even better than the Bai Shaoxing. It specialized in the business of buying and selling information. As long as the price was paid, it could be said that almost anything could be obtained. Of course, the higher the level of information, the higher the price needed to be paid. For Yi Shiwen, his strength naturally couldn't compare with the strength of a colossus like the Heaven Pavilion, which had an intelligence network all over the world. He could entrust the Heaven Pavilion to search for the reincarnation grass while he was searching by himself. The efficiency would undoubtedly be much faster in this way. However, it was naturally impossible to find the intelligence points of the Heaven Pavilion in this desolate wilderness. It was only possible to find them in a big city. He didn't say anything to the Blood Elf commander. After all, the Blood Elf couldn't stop him if he wanted to leave. The Blood Elf seemed to have thought of this. He recalled that Yi Shiwen had appeared and disappeared like a ghost before. He had appeared in their field of vision, as if he had teleported. He knew that Yi Shiwen was indeed very tyrannical, even though he didn't know his other strengths. Let's go first if that's the case. The Blood Elf saw that the young master was fine, so he walked out of the carriage and led the team to continue their journey. However, his divine sense was still locked inside the carriage. He didn't relax for even a moment. The carriage moved slowly. However, there was no movement inside the room. They couldn't feel the slightest movement. They could only judge that the carriage was moving by looking at the windows on both sides. The green-clothed girl looked at Yi Shiwen with some discomfort. She was a little embarrassed that a man had suddenly appeared. Yi Shiwen also saw this. He smiled faintly and said, You don't need to worry. Just pretend that I don't exist. The green-clothed girl pouted her small mouth. She was somewhat speechless as she looked at Yi Shiwen. He was already here. How could she pretend that he didn't exist? She couldn't deceive herself like this. How many years has your young master been cursed? Yi Shiwen asked. The green-clothed girl's expression darkened as she said this. She said, It has been 8 years. He was cursed when he was still in his mother's womb. That damned Zhao Wuji. He won't even let off such a young child. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but laugh. He had seen many crueler things in this world. The life and death of an ordinary person wouldn't stir up any waves in his heart. Therefore, he felt strange in his heart. Why did he suddenly want to meddle in this matter? For ordinary people, a whim might just be a random thought. But for the gods, it was impossible for them to suddenly have a thought without any reason or warning. So, Zhao Wuji should be a big shot. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep talking about him. Yi Shiwen asked with a smile. The Blood Elf had mentioned this name once. However, he was in a bad mood at that time, so he had directly rejected it. Now, the green-clothed girl had mentioned it again. It was obvious that she was the one who had cursed him. He's the worst bad guy, the green-clothed girl said fiercely. However, this was one of the most vicious words in her knowledge. He's the leader of the Southern Heaven Mercenary Corps. It's one of the major forces in Yendu Tian. He was the one who cursed the second young master. That's why he became like this. There aren't many people who practice curses. Not to mention, there aren't many people who can practice curses to such an extent. He's a genius, Yi Shiwen said in amazement. He had tried to eradicate the curse just now. However, he found that the most troublesome thing was not the curse. Instead, it was the fact that the curse had deeply integrated with the body of the little boy. Perhaps it was because he had been brought out of his mother's womb. If he wanted to remove the curse, the little boy would die. It could be said that the curse was extremely vicious. Perhaps because of this, the little boy's family didn't choose to eradicate the curse. Instead, they chose to treat it conservatively. The green-clothed girl puffed up her cheeks and glared at Yi Shiwen. Shouldn't this person belong to her country? Why is he speaking up for others? Yi Shiwen shook his head and laughed. He didn't explain anything. Water, water. The little boy faintly woke up from his coma. The green-clothed girl quickly poured a cup of water and fed it to the little boy. Chapter 25-27. Brother Wen, tell me a little about the outside world. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. The little boy had recovered his health. Compared to the average commander's child, this little boy was relatively quiet. He would constantly pester Yi Shiwen, wanting to know what the outside world was like. He was like this when he was born. Most of the time, he lived in a place with a barrier. He couldn't go out. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to suppress the curse on his body. He didn't know much about the outside world. He could only guess some things from the books. It was strange. Yi Shiwen didn't know why he and this little boy hit it off very well. There was a feeling of closeness from the bottom of his heart. Although Yi Shiwen didn't show any hostility these days, the Blood Elf commander didn't relax his surveillance on him. Yi Shiwen didn't care. You can go and see the outside world when you are well. Yi Shiwen touched the little boy's head. It's very difficult for me. I don't know if I will have a chance in the future. The little boy's expression was a bit gloomy. Brother Wen, I will tell you a secret. In fact, I once heard someone say that I might not live past 10 years old. I will die soon. Yi Shiwen was a little stunned. He looked at him. He didn't know that the little boy already knew. The little boy was quieter than the average child after getting along with him these days. However, he didn't show any sadness. Yi Shiwen didn't expect him to keep this secret in his heart and not tell anyone. Others didn't tell him, so he acted like he didn't know. Of course not. Yi Shiwen sat on the bedside. Your illness is troublesome, but it's not that troublesome, Yi Shiwen said with a smile. This little boy's problem was very tricky. Even if these curses were sealed, they were eroding his vitality all the time. There was only one fundamental way to solve this curse problem, and that was to let the little boy practice on his own. When his strength became stronger and stronger, the curse would slowly wear off. Well, I will teach you martial arts. After you practice martial arts, this curse can't do anything to you, Yi Shiwen said. Really? The little boy's eyes lit up as if he was burning with some hope. Yes, Yi Shiwen nodded. However, Yi Shiwen soon discovered that this little boy's progress was very fast. In fact, it was almost no less than Xiaoya's progress in the past. He was only at the Hodian realm, but his mind was particularly clever. He could almost draw inferences about other things from one instance. Moreover, his body had accumulated various kinds of medicinal efficacies that he had swallowed over the past few years. Moreover, these efficacies were too powerful. Moreover, he didn't have a way to digest and absorb them. So, he could only follow the seal and be sealed in every corner of his body. Now that Yi Shiwen had guided the efficacies out of his body, his cultivation speed could be said to be advancing at a tremendous pace. With enough energy support and Yi Shiwen's guidance, her cultivation speed was extremely fast. Compared to the time when Yi Shiwen was practicing, the conditions were much better now. He had to explore every step by himself in order to advance. Moreover, no one could guide him in such a simple way. However, he could already be considered lucky. At the very least, no one would dare to say that they weren't blessed by fate. The little boy continued to practice inside the carriage for more than half a month. Although this progress wasn't worth mentioning in Yi Shiwen's eyes, but it was already much better than the sickly appearance he had when he had first seen him. His vitality was getting stronger and stronger. Naturally, he could resist the erosion of the curse. The green-clothed girl saw that the young master's condition was getting better. So, she was no longer hostile towards Yi Shiwen. In the beginning, she was particularly vigilant against Yi Shiwen. She was afraid that he would suddenly make a sneak attack. However, she could also see that the two of them were very congenial. The originally taciturn young master had also become much more cheerful in these days. This made the green-clothed girl, who had always regarded the young master as her younger brother, feel a little relieved. On this day, Yi Shiwen was explaining some of the key points of cultivation to the little boy. Suddenly, a burst of shouting sound came from outside the carriage. In the sky, a long silver spear suddenly fell from the sky like a mountain and chopped down. The entire world was shaking. A huge crack appeared on the ground. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, all the creatures were trembling under the pressure of this terrifying momentum. Oh my God! A god has appeared! How could this be? After half a month of hurrying, they had already left the edge of the lost forest. Many people could be seen hurrying along the entire road. However, this long spear was able to take the lives of over 1,000 people with a single spear strike. Sir, why did you suddenly start a massacre? Someone asked loudly. Although the gods were high and mighty and terrifying, they were not invincible. There were too many hidden experts on the Kerfus Road. Even the gods wouldn't dare to be presumptuous. You really made me look for you. A middle-aged man in a luxurious robe said indifferently on top of that spear that was hundreds of feet long. Not good. It's coming for us. The Blood Elf commander said inwardly. The middle-aged man exuded an extremely dangerous aura, causing people to tremble with fear. God, I don't care who you are looking for, but aren't you going too far by killing indiscriminately? Someone stood up and said indignantly, You are courting death. The middle-aged man shouted coldly. The person who had just stood up didn't even have time to say anything before his body exploded on the spot. It was as if he had been torn apart by invisible rules. Fight it out with him. This god is clearly planning to kill us all. Someone roared angrily. Even if the other party was a god, it was too infuriating to kill so wantonly and treat them like pigs and dogs. Hundreds of people flew out all of a sudden. They wanted to join forces to kill the middle-aged man. However, the difference in strength between the two sides was too huge. With just a sweep of the spear, the hundreds of people were all killed. The smell of blood permeated everywhere, making people tremble in fear. You are overestimating yourselves, the middle-aged man said coldly. There were many people here, but none of them was a match for him. The difference between those who had yet to reach the Tao validation and those who had yet to reach the Tao validation was too great. A mist of blood scattered. This kind of divine might made everyone completely dispel the idea of fighting him. May I know who exactly you are looking for, my lord? Someone asked in a trembling voice. This was a complete suppression. A Tao validation expert was completely suppressing those who had yet to reach the Tao validation. There were also many demigods among them, but it was useless. They were too weak in front of a god. This was an absolute suppression. Are you still not coming out? Do you want me to invite you? The middle-aged man didn't even bother to look at the crowd. He floated in the air and waved his hand. The long spear shrunk until it was only about 3 meters long. Holding it in his hand, it gave off a terrifying aura. You guys take the young master away. I will stop him. The Blood Elf commander had no choice but to stand up. He knew very well that the middle-aged man was coming for him. It's no use. Do you think that you can escape from me? The middle-aged man said coldly. Those who have nothing to do with this should scram. Otherwise, there will be countless casualties. These people knew that the middle-aged man wasn't looking for them, so they immediately fled as if they had been granted amnesty. Although they were furious, they didn't dare to show it. The god in front of them was probably an invincible expert, even among the gods. They couldn't be compared to him at all. Even if they were killed, no one would complain about it. I didn't expect that the Sky South mercenary group would actually send you. Zhao Xian, one of the top 10 experts of the Sky South mercenary group. The Blood Elf commander said coldly. At the moment, the blood in his body was burning. It seemed like he was burning his own life force in order to obtain the strength to contend with the middle-aged man. Bill, the person leading the team this time, is actually you. No wonder. We actually misjudged you. We didn't detect your whereabouts. If we hadn't received the news this time, we wouldn't have known that you had actually taken this route. You're very careful, Zhao Xian said coldly. The Blood Elf commander immediately thought of Yi Shiwen as soon as he said this. It seemed that this was also the most likely possibility. Although Yi Shiwen's performance hadn't been abnormal for more than half a month, their route was also very secretive within the family. How could anyone know about it? They had only encountered such an inexplicable person along the way. Why are you looking at me? Yi Shiwen looked at the green-clothed girl in the carriage and said helplessly, Didn't I say that I don't know any nameless junior like Zhao Wuji? Why would I need to find this guy if I wanted to make a move? None of you can stop me. Well, it's not Brother Wen, the little boy said firmly. He was young and had a simple mind. However, it was precisely because of this that he could feel that Yi Shiwen was really close to him. Moreover, do you think you could have saved his life if I hadn't made a move back then? Why do you need to go through so much trouble? Yi Shiwen shrugged and said, Use your brain? Okay. Don't be a big boob without a brain. What did you say? The green-clothed girl shouted in embarrassment and annoyance. She knew that Yi Shiwen's words could sometimes make people furious in the past half a month. But our route is very secretive. It's impossible for ordinary people to know about it, the green-clothed girl said unwillingly. Yi Shiwen was speechless. He rolled his eyes at her and said, It's just that ordinary people don't know about it. It's not like no one knows about it. It's obvious that there's a mole in your family. Chapter 25-28. Yi Shiwen did not even need to think to know that there must be a traitor in the family. Because he could not be one of Zhao Wuji's people, then the conclusion was very simple. There was a traitor in the Z family. The green-clothed girl seemed to be unwilling to believe it. Although this matter was not unknown, only a few people knew about it. In fact, only a few people knew about it. If there was a problem, then it meant that something had happened to one of those few people. This result was unbelievable. Little guy, it seems like there are quite a lot of people who want to deal with you. Yi Shiwen touched the little boy's head and said with a smile, but his heart was a little heavy. Such a little boy had been tortured since he was young. The little boy did not speak, as if he had silently accepted this fate. The happiest days of his life were probably the time when he learned martial arts with Yi Shiwen. The whole carriage quickly turned around, wanting to escape into the distance. Zhao Xian was too terrifying, an existence that they could not match at all. Huh! The leader of the Blood Elves, Bill, shouted loudly. Boundless blood chi surged from his body, and his body flew out. A machete had appeared in his hand, and he slashed at Zhao Xian fiercely. Petty tricks. Bill, has anyone ever told you that you're still far from the imperishable realm when fighting with a sage realm expert? Suddenly, a holy kingdom appeared around Zhao Xian. An endless spear radiance burst out. In an instant, Bill was fixed in midair. His whole body was locked by the law chains, completely suppressed. No matter how much he burned his blood chi, it was useless in front of Zhao Xian. This was a real battle between sage realm experts suppressing eternal realm experts. Yi Shiwen could only be described as a monster. It could not be measured by normal circumstances. Bang! 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 Bill kept unwinding the law chains that wrapped around him, but there was no way. In the Holy Kingdom, all the laws were controlled by Zhao Xian, and he had no way to resist. How boring! Zhao Xian said, bored, and seemed to have lost his patience. I've said it before. Today, all of you will die here. There's no suspense at all. How troublesome. Do you know how much time I've wasted to deal with all of you? As Zhao Xian spoke, his face instantly turned ferocious. A spear had unknowingly appeared in his hand. He abruptly exerted force, and the spear light shot out, fiercely pointing towards Bill. Originally, Bill's movements were restricted by the God's kingdom. Now, it was even more difficult for him to resist. In a panic, he could only block with his long saber. Bang! There was a huge explosion, and Bill let out a muffled groan. His entire body flew backward like a meteor, and his entire left arm exploded. The convoy was still fleeing into the distance. They didn't even bother to hide and flew away on the spot. Although they also hoped that Bill could win, the reality was cruel, and far crueler than they had imagined. Bill couldn't even take one move from Zhao Xian and ended up with his arm exploding. The difference in strength between the two sides was simply too great, but they didn't dare to turn around or stop. This was an opportunity that Bill had exchanged with his life. Many of the cavalrymen had tears in their eyes. Their hands were firmly grasping the reins of their horses, but they couldn't do anything. Bang! There was another huge explosion, and a loud sound came from behind. A figure flew in front of the entire convoy like a meteor, and then fell down and fiercely crashed into a mountain. It was Bill. Bill's body was covered in blood at this time. Half of his body had been shattered, and he had sustained serious injuries. He had been completely crippled in the collision with Zhao Xian. Bill's body slightly squirmed. He wanted to get up, but he no longer had the strength to do so. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. You want to leave? I've just said that all of you will die this time. No one can escape. Zhao Xian said coldly. It was unknown when he had appeared in front of everyone. His body was wrapped in the aura of death. Some blood had splashed on his body. It wasn't his, but Bill's. Brother Wen, can you help us? Help Bill. The little boy in the carriage pulled Yi Shiwen's clothes and said. The green-clothed girl had placed all her hopes on Yi Shiwen. She was still suspicious of Yi Shiwen a moment ago, but she had no other choice at this time. If Yi Shiwen was also an enemy, then they would really be in despair. Moreover, Yi Shiwen hadn't shown any signs of hostility yet. But what should I do? I want help for free. Yi Shiwen said with a smile. How can you be like this? The green-clothed girl suddenly glared at him. She had constantly told herself that the person in front of her might be able to control their life and death. But she still got angry at the last moment. Bill was the only deity in the entire convoy. This was also for the sake of safety. The others were at most demigods. Even Bill had been seriously injured, let alone these demigods. No matter how many of them there were, they would just be sending themselves to their deaths. Did the heavens really want to destroy them? She couldn't help but feel sad when she thought of this. There's no love without reason in this world, and there's no hatred without reason either. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. As long as you can help us get through this hurdle, we will certainly reward you handsomely when we arrive at the Z family. The green-clothed girl begged. If Yi Shiwen didn't help them at this time, then they would really be finished. Her previous doubts about Yi Shiwen's strength had also disappeared at this time. Anyway, it was already like this. It was better to make a desperate attempt. There was no other way. I don't care about those things. What can your family give me? Yi Shiwen looked at the green-clothed girl with a faint smile. Brother Wen, this is all the money I have. Please help us. The little boy took out a copper coin from his bosom. This was all his savings. Since he was young, there had been people who had taken care of his food and clothing. Moreover, he was still young. So, no one had given him money. He had only found this copper coin. Although this copper coin was an unexpected gain, it had made him happy for a long time. It was the thing that he valued the most. Yi Shiwen looked at him. His small appearance carried a bit of determination and stubbornness. Well, I will help you once. Really, you are constantly changing your bottom line. I have never received such a low reward before. Yi Shiwen laughed and said, this might be the lowest reward he had ever received in his life. However, it was also the heaviest reward he had ever received in his life. This was only a copper coin. However, it was all his savings. Watch carefully. When dealing with trash, you must be fierce. Otherwise, they will not know fear. Yi Shiwen took this copper coin. Then his body instantly disappeared. The next moment, Yi Shiwen suddenly appeared in front of Zhao Xian. Who are you? Zhao Xian suddenly turned pale with fright. He didn't know how Yi Shiwen appeared. He just saw Yi Shiwen suddenly appear. Someone asked me to kill you. What should I do? Do you want to commit suicide, or do you want me to do it? Yi Shiwen said coldly. You are courting death. Zhao Xian instantly became furious. This guy of unknown origin had suddenly appeared. He was too arrogant. He grabbed towards the void, and a long spear appeared in his hand. He shook the spear, and the space shattered. The spear directly pointed towards Yi Shiwen. Not good. Danger. Bill, who was below, shouted with all his might. He had just fought with Zhao Xian, so he was very clear that it was not luck that Zhao Xian was ranked among the top 10 experts of the South Sky Mercenary Group. The South Sky Mercenary Group only had a few experts of the Sage Realm. In an instant, Yi Shiwen felt that the space around him seemed to be sealed by a terrifying power. This was the power of the Divine Kingdom. It instantly spread out along with the spear. In the Divine Kingdom, he was the supreme god. No one was his opponent. The other demigods had no time to react. They couldn't even see it. They only saw the spear coming in front of Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen didn't panic. He suddenly stomped on the ground and released the power of his body. A terrifying, imposing aura soared into the sky. The power of thunder leaped out of his body. Cracks appeared on the surface of the Divine Kingdom. Cracks started to appear on the surface of the kingdom. How is this possible? Zhao Xian was dumbfounded. His Divine Kingdom had actually shattered. It had shattered under the momentum of Yi Shiwen. How was this possible? How could an imperishable realm expert shatter his Divine Kingdom? No, it was not shattered. It was simply crushed by the momentum. How strong would that aura have to be? And the spear that he stabbed overstopped 3 inches in front of Yi Shiwen. It was blocked by his thunder armor and could not move an inch forward. Weak. Too weak. As a Sage Realm expert, this is all you have. What a joke. The look in Yi Shiwen's eyes was incomparably cold, especially when he knew that Zhao Xian was the so-called master of South Heaven Mercenary Corps who had made the little guys suffer so much. He couldn't hide his killing intention anymore. It was nothing for a man to act ruthlessly. But when it involved women and children and still used such despicable means, it really made him feel shameless. What bullsh *T Divine Kingdom. Watch me blow you up with one punch. Yi Shiwen clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and instantly punched out. The whole world changed color. Countless spiritual chi gathered on his fist, forming a terrible storm. Boom! The fist energy twisted. There was no excess fist will. It only relied on the powerful force to penetrate the sky and hit the Divine Kingdom. Boom! The Divine Kingdom was instantly shattered. The fist energy directly shattered everything and hit Zhao Xian's body. Boom! Endless energy exploded, forming a terrible energy cloud that spread out in all directions. Chapter 25-29. Boom! A powerful force exploded in the Divine Kingdom, and countless rules were broken on the spot, completely annihilated along with the void. The entire Divine Kingdom was completely shattered in front of the many demigods of the Z family. In their eyes, a terrifying and invincible figure was seriously injured by a single punch. They could not believe it at all. Zhao Xian was blasted away, and his body was covered in cracks, looking extremely hideous and terrifying. Zhao Xian himself did not expect to be beaten up so badly by Yi Shiwen. A person of the Sage Realm was beaten up by a guy of the Eternal Realm. If word got out, people would really laugh their heads off. But at this time, he did not find it funny at all, and he did not even feel the slightest anger. There was only fear. Yes, the fear of encountering a monster. He knew very well that between gods, a slight difference in plane would result in a drastic change in their actual combat prowess. Furthermore, there was a large plane between the Sage Plane and the Imperishable Plane, which was a terrifying thing. In other words, those who could do that were basically monsters. Those legendary geniuses and monsters were not people that people like him could be compared to at all. He turned around and wanted to escape, holding back the injuries on his body, not daring to fight Yi Shiwen again. Bill's eyes were wide open, seeing Yi Shiwen defeat Zhao Xian with a single punch, and seeing Zhao Xian scared out of his wits with just a single blow, wanting to turn around and run. It was as if he had seen the most incredible thing in the world. At this moment, Bill really believed Yi Shiwen. It was indeed as he said, if he really wanted to fight, no one in the entire convoy could stop him. That was not an ordinary person at all. Even Zhao Xian was in such a sorry state. If it were him, he probably would not even be able to stop that punch, and his body would probably collapse on the spot. Who is this person? Is he another expert from the outside world? He was an expert born and raised in the Kerfers Road, and his knowledge of the experts from the outside world was limited to those who were already famous and famous geniuses, even in the Kurfürst Road. He did not know much about the experts who had recently risen. If there were such a person on the Kurfürst Road, he would have been famous in the past 100,000 years. How could he be unknown? Therefore, it was not difficult for him to guess that he should be an outsider. If it was an outsider, then everything would be easy to handle. They could also rest assured. After all, it was unlikely that the outsider was Zhao Wuji's helper. Moreover, they wouldn't be able to stop him if he really wanted to attack. At this moment, he felt lucky that he hadn't attacked earlier. Otherwise, if he had angered this monster, the consequences would have been unimaginable. He was glad that he had agreed to let Yi Shiwen stay. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for him to escape this time. You want to leave? Do you think it's that easy? Yi Shiwen said coldly. He took a big stride forward, and his whole body grew bigger and bigger. He stomped on Zhao Xian, who had already flown into the distance. Bang! Zhao Xian's physical body was crushed to pieces on the spot, and his primordial spirit was annihilated in an instant. A sage plane cultivator was stomped to death by him without any hiccups. Is he really a monster? Even the experienced and knowledgeable demigods of the Z clan felt like they were about to faint when they saw this scene. It was not that they had never heard of an imperishable plane contending against a sage plane, but even if such a battle had happened, it was often a difficult battle in order to have a chance of winning. Even so, Yi Shiwen was already the most terrifying genius they knew of. They had never seen or heard of someone like Yi Shiwen, who had trampled a sage plane expert to death on the spot. Based on their understanding, they could only call him a monster. Yi Shiwen didn't think much of it. After plundering Zhao Xian's wealth, he returned to the convoy. At this moment, the way the knights looked at Yi Shiwen changed instantly. They were originally vigilant, but now they were full of fear and awe. The battle just now had completely subverted their worldview. They never thought that an imperishable plane cultivator could kill a sage plane cultivator like that. Moreover, they were insignificant figures who hadn't even proven their way. In front of this lord, they were probably just a little better than ants. The only one who could be particularly happy at the scene was the little boy. Seeing Yi Shiwen defeat Zhao Xian, who wanted to kill him, he was already jumping up and down. I told you, Brother Wen can't be a bad person. His thoughts were very simple, but it was also because of this that he was even more sensitive. He knew clearly who was good to him and who was bad to him, but he rarely said it. Brother Wen, that move of yours is too powerful. Can you teach me? I also want to become very, very big and quickly grow up. The little boy said excitedly. That won't do. Your current strength is not up to the requirements. When you can reach the Transcendence realm, I will teach you this move, Yi Shiwen said with a smile. But in reality, this kind of magic, when one reached that level, they would naturally be able to learn it. But what Yi Shiwen knew was naturally more exquisite than many people. Oh, so that's how it is? The little boy said with some disappointment, but he wasn't too depressed. After all, he was born in a famous family. Although no one taught him many things, he was also influenced by what he saw and heard. He was also very clear that cultivation matters couldn't be rushed. In fact, if Yi Shiwen hadn't taught him martial arts, it might have taken him 1 or 2 years to start learning martial arts. This was all thanks to Yi Shiwen. Why do children want to grow up? Yi Shiwen laughed involuntarily and said, when he was a child, he seemed to be like this, but when he really grew up, he felt that it was better when he was a child. Because he was simple, he didn't need to take anything seriously. Because I want to protect Mother. Mother cries all day because of me. If I grow up quickly, she won't have to worry about me anymore. The little boy looked at Yi Shiwen and said very seriously, she is always worried that I will die before I grow up, but if I can grow up, she should be relieved. Don't worry, you will slowly grow up. Yi Shiwen was a little stunned and didn't know what to say. The little boy's wish seemed childish, but it touched a certain chord in Yi Shiwen's heart. He wanted to grow up quickly so that he could protect her. When can I be as powerful as you? The little boy asked again. It will take a very, very long time, Yi Shiwen said with a smile. He was already considered to be in defiance of the natural order. Even if the little boy was also in defiance of the natural order, it would still take a few thousand years. That was already a very, very long time, enough to form a history of civilization. But things like cultivation can't be rushed. You have to do it step by step, understand? Yi Shiwen exhorted in a serious manner. He had cultivated to this stage, so no one understood better than him how important the foundation was. Well, I know. The little boy nodded seriously. Obviously, he remembered Yi Shiwen's words in his heart. In the future, he would understand how important these words were to him. Thank you, young master, for saving us. The Z family will be very grateful. Bill's voice came from below. After a period of recuperation, the injuries on his body were much better. After all, he was also a master of the eternal realm. On the surface, he had almost recovered. But the vitality of the internal injuries could not be recovered in a short time. No, I'm not interested in your Z family. It's just that this little boy is very much to my liking. Yi Shiwen shook his head and said. He was very clear that there was a problem with this route. It was likely that there was a problem within the Z family, but he had no intention of getting involved. If it wasn't for the fact that he saw that the little boy was particularly congenial for unknown reasons, he would not care about this matter at all. Bull did not feel anything because of Yi Shiwen's words. In his eyes, Yi Shiwen had become an unworldly master. Although he was only in the eternal realm, with his terrifying strength that could crush the sage realm, even in the Z family, he could enjoy extremely high treatment. He was not at the same level as him at all. At this time, he really believed what Yi Shiwen said before. He only helped because he liked the young master. After all, an unworldly master always had a strange temper. Although they were both in the eternal realm, at this time, Yi Shiwen in front of him had the qualifications of an unworldly master. Brother Wen, will you go back to the Z family with us? The little boy asked, pulling the corner of Yi Shiwen's clothes. The others also looked at Yi Shiwen nervously. Now that the route had been exposed, in other words, the opponent was likely to have laid an inescapable net waiting for them. If there was no Yi Shiwen to escort them, with just a few of them, it was impossible to bring the young master back to Yendu Tian. In that case, the consequences were simply unimaginable. But Yi Shiwen had now become an unworldly master in their eyes. For such a person, how could they dare to force him? Wasn't that courting death? What's more, in Bill's heart, if he could win Yi Shiwen over, there would undoubtedly be an unparalleled master as a backer in their faction. Their strength could also be increased a bit. It was just that this was not the right time to say it. Well, I'll leave after I send you back. I also have very important things to do, so I can only send you to the Z family. I can't care about other things. How could Yi Shiwen not know what they were thinking? But he did not have so much time to get involved in it. So let's hurry up now. Don't keep a low profile anymore. Go to Yendu Tian immediately. I'll clean up all the troublemakers. You guys are responsible for rushing at full speed. Thank you, young master, Bill hurriedly said with great joy. With Yi Shiwen's help, their safety was guaranteed. Chapter 2530. Yendu Heaven, in the Kurfürst Road of the 33 Heavens, was also one of the uppermost upper heavens. It was bustling with people and was much more developed than the lower heavens. When the caravan entered Yendu Heaven, it immediately felt different. Although they were rushing at full speed, it had already been 3 months since Yi Shiwen stomped Zhao Xian to death. After all, they had crossed many middle heavens from the lower heavens to finally arrive at Yendu Heaven. In Yendu Heaven, the Z family's power immediately grew. The most obvious thing was that along the way, there were more and more people protecting them. Many masters of the Z family in charge of various places also joined the caravan under Bill's command. Although they were already the best of the best, the caravan that originally had only dozens of people expanded to hundreds of people. Among them, there were as many as dozens of gods in charge. The power of the Z family in Yendu Heaven was also one of the most prosperous forces in the Kurfürst Road. Among them, there was a powerful master of the Sage Realm in the center. In the Kurfürst Road, masters of the Sage Realm were almost at the level of the Supreme Elder of every force. No matter where they went, they would be treated as distinguished guests and worshipped. But now they had been mobilized because of this little guy, which made Yi Shiwen have a deeper understanding of the little guy's importance. Perhaps this little guy was very important to the Z family. But even so, after hearing Bill's introduction of Yi Shiwen, they still did not dare to be disrespectful to him. Not only Bill, but even the dozens of knights who were originally there also began to promote Yi Shiwen in unison. Killing a master of the Sage Realm with 1 foot, such strength was terrifying. The Sage Plane Master, who had been very arrogant before, had his eyelids twitching when he heard this. He was a Sage Plane Master himself, so he naturally knew the gap between the Sage Plane and the Eternal Realm, but he had still been beaten like a dead dog by Yi Shiwen. Just imagining how powerful Yi Shiwen was enough to make him shudder. This made him not dare to show any disrespect to Yi Shiwen. Maintaining respect for the strong was the rule of this world. They did not doubt Bill's words, as there was no need to do so. After the Sage Plane Cultivator joined in, he saw an assassin with his own eyes. A Sage Plane assassin broke into the carriage that the little guy was in. He was less than 10 meters away, and then he was crushed to death. When he saw that scene, the Sage Plane Cultivator from the Z clan could not help but break out in a cold sweat. That was indeed a monster. Generally speaking, this kind of assassin was very difficult to discover among those of the same rank. Unless one was deliberately on guard, the probability of being assassinated was very high. Therefore, people were often very afraid of these assassins. Even if they had a very high chance of winning in a head-on battle, the problem was that these assassins would not fight head-on. The word fair and square did not exist in their dictionary. Even these assassins, who had already proven their killing Tao, could hide in a place for thousands of years just to kill a single target. As the saying went, one could only be a thief for 1,000 days. How could one guard against a thief for 1,000 days? Therefore, this move of Yi Shiwen's had shocked everyone. She didn't doubt Yi Shiwen's words at all. In fact, before entering Yen Du Tian, the entire convoy had faced several surprise attacks, but they were all stopped by Yi Shiwen. This was a little surprising to Yi Shiwen. It should be known that these surprise attacks, or those who blocked the way, without exception, were all masters of the Sage Plane. Although they were not existences at the peak of the Sage Plane, this was already rare enough. On the Kerfus Road, the Sage Plane could already be regarded as top-notch experts. Apart from those monstrous geniuses, it could be said that there was no one who could rival them. It would cost a lot to hire one of such figures, not to mention that there were so many of them attacking one after another. If it was only the people from the Tianan mercenary group, it would be fine, but this assassin was obviously not from the Tianan mercenary group. Yi Shiwen extracted the memories from the spirit in his mind and knew that he was the leader of a certain assassin organization. After accepting this task, he came in person, but unfortunately, he encountered a monster like Yi Shiwen. He was killed by Yi Shiwen when he was within 10 meters of him. However, Yi Shiwen did not detect any more information, because the other party directly self-destructed on the spot, and his spirit also exploded. It seemed that there was a restriction inside his body, and once he failed, he would explode on the spot. This also made Yi Shiwen could not help but sigh. This little guy did not know who had offended this little guy. At such a young age, he had actually provoked so many masters. If he had not met Yi Shiwen, then it could be said that he would really die. However, the little guy himself did not think so. During this time, under Yi Shiwen's protection, he was also much happier. Every day, he just followed Yi Shiwen to practice martial arts, and in just a few months, he had already cultivated to the Hotian 8th stage, and only a little bit more, he could enter the Hotian 9th stage, and was not far from opening his meridians and entering the Xiantian realm. Although the little guy did not know the dangers of the world, but he had never neglected practicing martial arts, because he had a strong reason to become stronger. Yi Shiwen could not help but sigh with emotion. One must know, whether it was himself or his predecessor, when this little guy was at this age, he was just a little kid who only knew how to play and had never thought about becoming stronger. However, under his protection, the convoy very smoothly arrived at the Z clan in Yen Du Tian. It was a very large city, and at a glance, Yi Shiwen was afraid that there were hundreds of millions of people living in this city, just like a small country. In the center of this city was the ancestral land of the Z clan, and around it were some of the vassals of the Z clan and other clans' living places. After entering this city, Yi Shiwen also said his goodbyes. After entering this city, Yi Shiwen clearly felt many tyrannical divine senses sweeping over. He had already received the news before, and now the convoy had entered into their protection. In this case, Yi Shiwen could be considered as helping the Buddha to the west. Since we have arrived home, then I will leave first. Yi Shiwen said, Brother Wen, can't you stay? My father and mother must also want to see you. After all, you saved me. The little guy looked at Yi Shiwen, obviously hoping that he would stay. The little guy was an only child since childhood, and during this period of time, he even regarded Yi Shiwen as an elder brother, and naturally did not want him to leave. Yes, young master, it is difficult to express your great kindness to our Z clan. Why don't you stay? I think the patriarch will definitely meet you. Bill stepped forward and said, among these people, he was the only one who was familiar with Yi Shiwen. No, I still have my own things to do. I can't stay. Yi Shiwen looked at this city, Yendu City. Yendu City was named after this city, and it used to be the core of the entire Yendu City. Since the Z clan could occupy such a place, one could imagine the great power in Yendu City. Although it was not as powerful as before, it could still be regarded as a giant. This city could be said to be very complete with all kinds of facilities, and many forces also set up branches here, including the intelligence organization that Yi Shiwen needed. If he wanted to buy information about the reincarnation grass, naturally, the bigger the branch, the better. Now he also had to deal with his own matters. Mountains and rivers will meet again. If fate allows, we will meet again in the future. Everyone take care. After saying this, Yi Shiwen took a step forward and directly disappeared into the void. The little guy was still silently looking in the direction where Yi Shiwen disappeared, very reluctant. Many other cultivators were even more shocked. After all, this was Yendu City, the core of Yendu City, and it was not clear how many matrices and barriers there were in the city. Even gods had to fly here, and it was impossible to travel through space. Otherwise, the enemy would be able to teleport into the city without anyone knowing, but this person was able to completely ignore the matrices and barriers and teleport away. Just how high was his level of cultivation? He really is strong. Is he really not hiding his strength? I still find it a little hard to believe that an eternal realm can be this strong. The person who said this was the master of the Sage Realm who followed the convoy. At this moment, he really felt a sense of shame. What master of the Sage Realm? It seemed that in front of the Eternal Realm, it was not even worth mentioning. Where's Hong Yun? A hurried voice was heard from afar. Following that, a tall and straight figure flew over from the void. In almost an instant, he had already arrived at this place. It was a handsome, middle-aged man dressed in a purple robe. His face was filled with anxiety. Father! The little guy quickly went up to the middle-aged man in the purple robe and hugged him. The little guy's name was Zi Hong Yun. Thank goodness you're fine. Thank goodness you're fine. It's all my fault. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been tricked by those guys. Thank goodness you're fine. The middle-aged man looked at his son, who had been suffering since he was a child, heartbroken. He did not know whether he was comforting the little guy or himself. What's going on? He looked at Bill. Bill quickly went up to the middle-aged man in the purple robe and told everything that happened along the way. The middle-aged man in the purple robe thought for a while and said, in that case, it was thanks to the help of that master that our Hong Yun was able to escape. The middle-aged man in the purple robe said quickly, it's all my fault. I didn't protect you well enough, young master. The middle-aged man in the purple robe did not blame Bill carelessly. It's not your fault. I thought I would be the bait to lure those guys, but who would have thought that I would be exposed? The middle-aged man in the purple robe did not blame Bill carelessly. That person doesn't seem to be from our 33 heavens, so there is no record of him. It seems that he is an outsider. Bill said carefully, no matter what, pay more attention in the future. No matter what, he is the savior of our Hong Yun. All right, I'll bring Hong Yun in first. You guys go ahead and rest in the clan. The middle-aged man in the purple robe said, and directly flew into the ancestral land of the Z family deep in Yen City with the little guy in his arms. The middle-aged man in the purple robe gave them too much of a deterrent. At this time, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. Someone mentioned, "Why do I suddenly feel that the master looks so much like that master?" Chapter 25:31. After Yi Shiwen left the convoy, he soon arrived at the Heaven Pavilion branch in the city. The Heaven Pavilion had branches in many cities. The bigger the city, the bigger the Heaven Pavilion branch, and the higher the authority. Yin City was undoubtedly the top city, so the Heaven Pavilion branch was also the top. The entire Heaven Pavilion branch was a very terrifying artifact. Its aura was faintly discernible, but it was guarding the entire Heaven Pavilion. One could imagine how powerful it was. People came in and out, surging like a tide. Experts of various races were here to exchange information and intelligence. After Yi Shiwen entered, he immediately revealed his aura as a deity and was immediately invited to the VIP pavilion. This was also very normal. In any organization, a deity-level expert was enough to be a VIP. Of course, there were still differences in the level of VIP, according to the difference in strength. "Senior, please wait here for a moment. Our supervisor will be here soon." This attendance cultivation was good, but he was only in the mysterious realm. He was still a bit away from the demigod level. He didn't dare to neglect a deity-level expert and immediately went to find the supervisor. Those who could become the supervisor of a branch like the Heaven Pavilion were basically all deities who had confirmed their Tao. Soon, a beautiful woman came out of the VIP pavilion. She was wearing a long robe, and her temperament was outstanding. She was originally a goddess. The woman sensed Yi Shiwen and found that it was like a clay ox entering the sea. She couldn't detect anything at all. She only felt that he was unfathomable. "Hello, Senior. May I know what kind of information you want to inquire about?" The beautiful woman quickly went through her mind. She couldn't find a powerful deity who could match the purple-robed young man in front of her. With her cultivation, remembering people was just a basic ability. However, she quickly reacted. It was very likely that this person didn't want to reveal his true identity. This was also very likely. "Can you inquire about any information here? Can you also help to collect information for a long time?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Yes, as long as you give us enough compensation, we can naturally help to collect information about things you are interested in for a long time," the beautiful goddess said quickly. "Well, I'd like to ask about a kind of divine material called reincarnation grass. I wonder if your heavenly pavilion has any information about reincarnation grass?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Senior, you're looking for the reincarnation grass? That's not easy to find. Since ancient times, very few have appeared." The beautiful goddess's brain was like a supercomputer. She quickly recalled the information she had read about the reincarnation grass. This type of divine material was naturally very valuable, but not only was it valuable, it just so happened that it was rare, extremely rare, to the point that many people might not even have heard of it. Only the Heaven Pavilion, which had been collecting all kinds of information for countless years, had managed to obtain a few records of it. However, it was only those few times. She did not know what the person in front of her wanted the reincarnation grass for. As it did not appear many times, very few people knew the effects of the reincarnation grass. Even the Heaven Pavilion was no exception. However, since the person in front of him asked, he must have his reasons. "I wonder why Senior is looking for the reincarnation grass?" That goddess asked. "Do I need to explain this to you?" Yi Shiwen looked at her indifferently. The goddess quickly shook her head and said, No, please don't misunderstand. We don't want to pry into your privacy. It's just that we are also responsible for collecting the effects of the reincarnation grass. If you can provide us with one of the effects of the reincarnation grass, we can also pay you for this information." "This is not your business." Yi Shiwen shook his head and did not reveal the effects of the reincarnation grass. "That's a pity." The goddess had a look of pity on her face as she said, "We can help you look for information about the reincarnation grass, but this is also divided into active and passive ones. If it's passive, we'll notify you if we receive any information about the reincarnation grass. However, that might take a long time. If it's active, we'll use the Heavens Pavilion's power to help you find information about the reincarnation grass. Which one would you like to choose?" Yi Shiwen thought for a moment and said, "I choose active. The sooner, the better. The more detailed the information, the better." That's natural. As for the fees, we will judge the importance and detail of the information to charge you. You don't have to worry about this. We still have our reputation, the goddess said professionally. She had encountered such situations many times, and she was very familiar with it. However, the reincarnation grass is very rare. If you want us to use our power to find it, even the most basic one would cost 100 million divine roots. What do you think? She looked at Yi Shiwen. 100 million divine roots was a huge sum even for a sage plane expert. It was not something that ordinary people could take out. However, the reincarnation grass was indeed rare. Moreover, the manpower and resources they needed to find it were not insignificant. They needed to use the intelligence network of many realms. Although the price was expensive, it was not unreasonable. Yi Shiwen did not even think about it. He said directly, "Sure. I hope it's done as soon as possible." Although 100 million divine roots was a huge sum, Yi Shiwen could afford it at the moment. Many sage realm experts had died in his hands along the way. Although they were not very rich, each of them had more than 10 million divine roots. In addition, the assassin was the leader of the organization. The entire assassin organization's wealth was concentrated on him. Just from him alone, Yi Shiwen had obtained 100 million divine roots. He could be said to be rich now, so he naturally did not care. However, even so, he was secretly speechless. The fees for intelligence were indeed ridiculously expensive. No wonder the Heaven Pavilion was so rich, using a divine weapon as a branch. Even the Hidden Valley would not be able to spend such a large sum. He knew that the Heaven Pavilion must have earned a lot, but there was nothing he could do. He did not have such resources on hand. He knew that he would be ripped off, but there was nothing he could do. That's for the best. However, we still need you to pay 50 million divine roots as a deposit. What do you think? The goddess looked at Yi Shiwen and asked. She was also a little excited. 100 million divine roots was a huge transaction. If she could complete this transaction, her ranking in the Heaven Pavilion would rise as well. Furthermore, she would be able to get a lot of commission from this transaction. This was really a double blessing. All right. Yi Shiwen directly handed over 50 million divine roots. He was not afraid that the other party would renege on the debt. The Heaven Pavilion would not go so far as to ruin its reputation for 50 million divine roots. Then I'll go and settle the formalities for you. Please wait a moment. Since this transaction of yours is relatively large, I'll make the decision to make a VIP card for you. In the future, no matter what information you want to gather or sell, you can do it through this VIP card. Moreover, there will be discounts, the goddess said with a smile. Her expression was even more respectful. Someone who could casually take out 50 million divine roots as a deposit was indeed a nouveau riche. This was also to entice the nouveau riche. All sorts of discounts were given. Yi Shiwen nodded. He did not have any extra expression. He looked completely like a superior senior. At this moment, he was even more able to intimidate people. Although this goddess did not know who he was, it was obvious that they did not know who he was. They were only responsible for selling and collecting information. As for who the other party was, it did not matter to them at all. Yi Shiwen sat on his seat, closed his eyes, and rested. He was deducing martial arts. Not far away from him, a group of people was incessantly clamoring. The crowd was like stars surrounding the moon. They surrounded an old man. This old man's expression was calm, and he was not moved at all. "Elder, this time, the city lord asked you to return. Could it be that there is some good news?" Someone asked. "Of course, this is a big news. You guys have heard of the Kuan Peng, right? This time, the city lord personally went and caught a Kuan Peng." That old man said calmly. "Oh my God, the Kuan Peng. That was a powerful existence from the mythological era. Now, I have never heard of the Kuan Peng. I did not expect to see a Kuan Peng with my own eyes. When we kill it, will we be able to get some of the Kuan Peng's blood essence? I have never eaten Kuan Peng meat before. What did you guys say? Kuan Peng?" That old man was about to speak, but he saw a young man standing in front of him. The young man's eyes were wide open, and he was staring at him. "Young man, what do you want?" That old man's face revealed a displeased expression. He seemed to be very dissatisfied with the young man's impolite behavior. "I will ask you again. Did your city lord catch a kunpeng?" Yi Shiwen's expression was gloomy, like a volcano that was about to erupt. "So what if I did?" The old man was instantly enraged. "Which family are you from?" Yi Shiwen said coldly. The old man instantly became vigilant. It was obvious that the young man in front of him did not come with good intentions. "We're from Ink Cloud City." "What? Could it be that you want to go against our Ink Cloud City?" The others weren't so scheming, and they spoke it out directly. Clouding City, very good," Yi Shiwen said, gritting his teeth. Almost without guessing, he knew that the captured kunpeng was the young kunpeng. Other than him, there was no other possibility. The young kunpeng had also entered the Kurfürst Road, but he did not expect to be captured. "What do you want?" That old man immediately stood up. If he still did not understand Yi Shiwen's hostility, then he would have wasted his time. "Who are you? Tell me obediently." That old man cast a cold glance at Yi Shiwen and suddenly reached out with his big hand. Chapter 2532. Because it was right in front of him, the big hand was like a sharp blade stabbing out horizontally. The palm pierced through the space, tearing a crack and directly grabbing at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's eyes instantly changed into countless simple and unadorned patterns. He let the old man's big hands pass through his body. However, the old man couldn't grab him no matter how hard he tried. It was as if there were countless layers of space around him, wrapping him up. Everyone present was extremely knowledgeable, and it was not difficult for them to recognize the origin of this move. It was the signature move of an eternal plane expert, able to hide oneself in thousands of spaces. This was also a sign that one had a deeper understanding of the laws of space. However, it also depended on who the opponent was. If the opponent was also in the eternal plane, the effect of this move would be much weaker. But if the opponent was in the sage plane, it was almost useless. The understanding of space of a sage plane expert was definitely above that of an eternal plane expert. Therefore, when they saw this scene, they could not help but be a little dumbfounded. A sage plane expert had not been able to catch him in an instant. Even if one did it unintentionally and the other did it intentionally, but with the strength of a sage plane expert, it was not difficult to deal with an eternal plane expert. Yi Shiwen's move, even if he only succeeded once, was enough to make them look at him in a different light. And in front of him, the old man took a step forward. In an instant, endless momentum rushed out, and endless spiritual chi rolled out of his body. It was a very powerful magic. In an instant, the entire Heaven Pavilion branch seemed to have become an endless divine kingdom, surrounded by him. He was going to use his martial arts' true meaning to kill him. Although he knew that it was not far, it felt as if the whole world was swallowed up by this divine kingdom. The people around the old man also retreated to the side, not daring to get close at all. Yi Shiwen's space flow seemed to be a little unsatisfactory, and it was greatly affected. "Tell me, what happened to kunpeng?" Yi Shiwen said coldly. "Kid, don't be too arrogant." The old man was furious in an instant. Yi Shiwen still dared to be arrogant in this situation. It was simply a violation of his bottom line. His big hand suddenly fell towards Yi Shiwen and directly inserted into the distorted space around Yi Shiwen's body. The originally distorted space was now sliced apart like tofu. After unfolding his divine kingdom, his strength instantly skyrocketed. In this place, he was the ruler of everything in the world. Bang! Finally, Yi Shiwen made his move. He blasted out a punch and fiercely collided with the big hand of the old man. An astonishing collision occurred, but what made many people shocked was that the one who was blasted away wasn't Yi Shiwen, but the old man. The old man's legs tore open two huge cracks in the void as he slammed into the edge of the divine kingdom. It was the wall of Heaven Court. It was also a divine artifact. Naturally, it would not be so easy to smash through it. Courting death. The old man didn't react for a moment, but he quickly reacted. His entire body's aura swept out, causing the ground to tremble violently. All of his power was concentrated in his hand. Stubborn fool! Yishuin took a step forward and instantly arrived in front of the old man. He blasted out a punch, and the entire divine kingdom of the old man collapsed inch by inch. The entire divine kingdom instantly collapsed under Yishuin's soaring aura. This old man could be considered an expert of the first generation, but he couldn't even withstand a little bit of Yishuin's attack. This was such a terrifying punch. It seemed as if the world had completely collapsed under this punch, and the frequency of the world had changed under this punch. Human race saints appeared everywhere, and endless songs of praise were sung. This was no longer as simple as it seemed. This punch directly blasted out the civilization of the human race. This was an extremely terrifying fist technique. Fighting against this punch was equivalent to fighting against the entire civilization of the human race. Who could have such terrifying strength? The old man's face turned green. He had never expected that Yishuin's fist would be so terrifying. He had retreated the moment his divine kingdom had shattered. He had wanted to avoid this terrifying fist, but it was useless. Yishuin, who was in a violent rage, had unleashed almost all of his strength. His divine senses had completely locked onto the old man. No matter how the old man tried to dodge, it was useless at all. The punch continued to bombard, directly hitting his body. Bang! A loud sound was heard, and the old man was blasted away on the spot. He only felt that the strength of his entire body had been sucked out, and it was flowing out in a frenzy. His entire body seemed to have shattered into pieces, and he was spitting out blood all over his body. In the eyes of the others, they clearly saw that the old man's body had exploded inch by inch under Yishuin's punch. He wanted to recover, but he couldn't completely glue his body back together. He could only painfully fly high in the air. Bang! At this moment, everyone saw a big hand grab out of the void and grab the old man's neck fiercely. The old man struggled desperately, but it was of no use. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't break free from Yishuin's grasp. What's going on? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? How is this possible? This is impossible. A Sage Realm expert was defeated so easily. The experts who came with the old man were hysterical and completely crazy. In their eyes, the old ancestor was almost invincible, but in front of this young man, he couldn't even withstand a single blow. He wasn't a match for him at all. It was nothing to look young at all. Gods could naturally maintain their youthful looks, but the problem was that the person in front of them was clearly only in the eternal realm. How could he be so powerful? Their strength had not reached that level, but their eyesight was not bad, and they could also recognize Yishuin's strength. But it was precisely because of this that they felt like they were in a mess. Since young, they had been taught by the elders in their sects that an eternal realm expert who could escape from the hands of a sage realm expert was already a very rare genius, and those who could fight against a sage realm expert could be said to be super geniuses. But what should they say about someone who had easily defeated a sage realm expert? They were a bit stunned for a moment, and they didn't know what to say. At the same time, there was some deep fear. Even their great ancestor was not a match for him, let alone them. Impossible. How could I be defeated by a small, eternal realm expert? I don't believe it. The old man struggled with all his might. At this time, he had also recovered from the state of confusion, but he was even more in disbelief. His whole body was trembling. An incomparable anger was released from the bottom of his heart. For him, this was a humiliation that he had never encountered in his life. Who are you? Do you want to go against our clouding city? The old man continued to struggle, trying to scare Yishuin. But he didn't know that Yishuin was waiting for him. Clouding City is nothing. I only have one question for you. Has Kunpeng been captured by you? Yishuin said coldly. At this time, what he was most concerned about was the situation of the young Kunpeng. Yes, that's right, so what? The old man roared. He finally understood what it was about. It turned out to be about the Kunpeng. The Kunpeng had reappeared and appeared in the Kurfish Road. There were probably more than a few people who were interested in the young Kunpeng. Nothing. I just want to see if this clouding city has eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts and is courting death. Yi Shiwen said with a cold smile. Many people in the surroundings looked over. Those who could enter the VIP pavilion had a high status. They also knew about the Cloud Ink City, which could be considered as a relatively large force. Although the main force was not in Yendu Tian, they still had some face when they went out. Who dared to capture their elder and interrogate him like this was simply going to completely fall out with them. What was the background of this young man? He actually dared to go against the Cloud Ink City, or in other words, he completely looked down on the Cloud Ink City. As a force that was born and raised in the Kerfus Road, the Cloud Ink City also had a very wide network, and there were also many experts in the Cloud Ink City. You will regret it like this. You will definitely die without a burial place after offending our Cloud Ink City. The old man shouted. It seemed that every time he said it, he could boost his confidence. Don't worry, even if the Cloud Ink City doesn't look for me, I will look for them. They really have eaten a bear's heart and are really tired of living. Yi Shiwen's eyes were extremely cold. It could be said that he had raised the young Kunping. Although Yi Shiwen's original purpose of seizing the Kunping list was not simple, people's hearts were made of flesh. Over the years, the relationship between Yi Shiwen and the young Kunping had already been extremely good. Previously, the young Kunping had also rushed into the ancient Phoenix domain for his matter. However, after not seeing each other for more than 1,000 years, the young Kunping was actually captured. Although he did not know what method the other party used, it had already completely enraged Yi Shiwen. Many people gasped. This young man actually wanted to go to the Cloud Ink City. He was simply a monster. They looked at Yi Shiwen's eyes, and the killing intent could not be hidden at all. Perhaps it was not just words, but he was going to put it into practice. For them, this was also the first time. This young man's killing intent was shocking. Who was he? Many people were not only interested in this young man, but also in the Kunping. Everyone had heard of the power of the Kunping in the past. It was the head of the 10 great ferocious beasts and the descendant of the demon master of the heavenly court. Just this alone was enough to attract attention. There were so many divine beasts and ferocious beasts left behind in the mythological era, but there were only a few that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Kunping. One could imagine how eye-catching it was. Crazy, you're a madman. In the eyes of the old man, the current Yi Shiwen was already a madman. Mister, please don't act recklessly, okay? Suddenly, the divine daughter came back. Chapter 2533. The goddess looked at Yi Shiwen anxiously. She had never thought that such a thing would happen so soon after she left. The two guests were fighting on the spot. What was even more terrifying was that the delicate-looking young man had grabbed the old man in the sage realm, as if he was carrying a dead dog. She could not help but look at Yi Shiwen's strength in a new light. She had originally thought that Yi Shiwen was just an ordinary god, just a little unfathomable, and she could not tell how strong he was. Now it seemed that he was more than just unfathomable. Was he a monster? How could an imperishable realm cultivator beat up a sage realm cultivator so miserably? It was not that they had never heard of such a person, but those were all invincible geniuses and monsters who dominated the entire Kerfus Road. At the moment, there was only one sage realm cultivator in charge of the entire branch, and this was because the location was very important. Even with the power of Heaven Pavilion, it was impossible to arrange for a sage realm cultivator to be in charge of every branch. It was already considered important for a normal branch to have a god who had proven his way to be in charge. Usually, it would be a demigod at the peak. Moreover, this place was so close to the ancestral land of the Yendu Z clan. The Yendu Z clan would not allow two strong cultivators to appear here. One or two might not be a big deal, but there were too many organizations with branches stationed here. They could not guarantee that nothing would happen. This was also a very big threat. Therefore, there was no one who could stop this strange young man in front of them at the moment. Only the cultivators of the Yendu Z clan could stop this young man. Yi Shiwen glanced at the goddess and said, "What? Are you going to intervene in this matter? Senior, I hope you can give Heaven Pavilion some face. If you do this, it will be very difficult for us," the goddess said tactfully, but she also vaguely pointed out the behemoth that was Heaven Pavilion. In this branch, there was indeed no one who could do anything to Yi Shiwen. However, Heaven Pavilion was not just a simple branch. It was a terrifying existence that spanned across the heavens and realms. How could such an organization not have top cultivators in charge? If one angered Heaven Pavilion, it could be said that there would be no place for them to hide. No matter where they hid, it would be difficult to avoid Heaven Pavilion's eyes and ears. As soon as they appeared, they would be hunted down. Yishuan didn't continue to act tough. Instead, he said, "All right, I'll give face to your heavenly court. I won't kill him here, but this is a personal grudge between us. I hope that your heavenly court won't intervene." The goddess couldn't help but feel somewhat helpless. She wasn't going to kill Yishuan here. However, the Heaven Pavilion wouldn't be able to settle the matter if Yishuan caused trouble here. Moreover, it would damage their prestige. However, there was no other way. It was much better than Yishuan going on a killing spree here. There were always some people in the world who disregarded the rules, and they had the ability to do so. Clouding City won't let you off if you dare kill me. The elder's eyes widened instantly, and he began to panic. He never expected that this young man in front of him wasn't joking and really dared to kill him. This made him instantly terrified. He was indeed an elder of Cloud Ink City, but what was the use of this identity now? This person didn't care at all. No, it should be said that the reason why he was so unlucky was related to Cloud Ink City. The other party came for Cloud Ink City, and he wanted to use Cloud Ink City to scare the other party. Wasn't that putting the cart before the horse? When he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel a little depressed. If it were any other time, Yishuan might not kill him. However, he was completely enraged by the capture of the young Kuan Peng. He was already furious about this *T Cloud Ink City. I want to buy information now. You must have received information about the capture of the Kuan Peng. I want as much as you have, all of it. The cost will be deducted from the deposit. Yishuan looked at the goddess coldly. He had paid 50 million divine source as a deposit. It was naturally more than enough to deduct some of the cost. Good. That goddess promptly went to prepare the information for Yishuan. Yishuan's eyes, in her opinion, had a kind of terrifying deterrent power. Yishuan was like a fierce beast in the starry sky when he was in a violent rage, causing her to shudder with fear. How could she afford to provoke such a person? The identity of the Heaven Pavilion could be said to be superior, but it also depended on the situation. In front of those who were truly powerful, they were nothing at all. Soon, Yishuan got the information he wanted. He directly teleported away, along with the people who came with the elder. They cried and screamed and wanted to escape, but it was of no use. They couldn't escape from Yishuan's capture. He directly abolished Yin City and then killed all these people. Tianyuan Mirror absorbed their blood essence. These days, Tianyuan Mirror had been consuming more and more energy to suppress the sword of Avicii, which made Yishuan feel a little overwhelmed. Fortunately, the energy generated from killing this master of the Sage Realm could last a little longer. He killed all of them to buy some time for himself. He wanted to prevent these people from leaking information. If possible, he still hoped to solve this matter with as little cost as possible. At this time, he carefully looked at the information that the Heaven Pavilion had obtained about the capture of the young Kuan Peng. The Heaven Pavilion was indeed a spoiler when it came to information. The cause and effect of this matter were completely recorded. The Cloud Ink City was above the Taichi Heaven, another upper heaven. In the Taichi Heaven, the Cloud Ink City was considered one of the more powerful forces. According to the records, there were many experts in the Cloud Ink City, and it was very likely that there was a powerful expert at the peak of the Sage Plane in charge. Of course, these were all guesses of many. However, in the report from the Heaven Pavilion, it was clearly written that this was not a guess. There was indeed a powerful expert at the peak of the Sage Plane in charge. Although he hadn't shown himself for many years, there were records in the Heaven Pavilion's information. However, because he wanted records about the Kuan Peng, there was not a very detailed record. It was more about the Kuan Peng. Around a few tens of years ago, the rock had appeared in the Taki Heavens, and it quickly drew the attention of Ink Cloud City. Thus, Ink Cloud City made a move silently and set up a formation before finding a way to deceive the rock into it. After being besieged until now, They'd finally succeeded and captured the exhausted rock just now. This was because what the Cloud Ink City had learned seemed to be related to the Kuan Pong. Hence, they wanted to interrogate the Kuan Pong about something related. However, the Heaven Pavilion's information did not contain any more specific information. It seemed that due to the short period of time, they had not found out anything specific. However, this was only one aspect of the problem. While the Cloud Ink City was a big obstacle, according to the information in the Heaven Pavilion's report, there were more than 1 or 2 people who were interested in the Kuan Pong. There were even some geniuses among them. Although the young Kuan Pong had not grown up, it was still a descendant of the ancient beast. It could be said that its entire body was a treasure. In the eyes of many, it was undoubtedly a great treasure. There were more than a few people who wanted to capture it. According to the information in the Heaven Pavilion, many masters had pressured the Cloud Ink City in private, but the Cloud Ink City refused to budge, refusing to admit that they had captured the young Kuan Pong. It was only when the news was leaked and confirmed by others that it caused an uproar and attracted the attention of countless people. Originally, many people were only skeptical and did not dare to confirm it. Now that they were completely sure, they naturally would not let go of this opportunity. In another 10 days, it would be the birthday of the Cloud Ink City Lord. According to the calculations of the Heaven Pavilion, there would probably be many people who would interrogate about the Kuan Pong at the birthday banquet, and it was very likely that there would be a fight. There might even be geniuses who would personally make a move. It seems that there are many people who are interested in the little guy. Yi Shiwen's words were emotional, but there was an unparalleled, murderous aura in his eyes. No matter who it was, as long as they dared to target the little guy, they had to die. He would not allow anyone to take the little guy away. However, he did not act rashly, because when the time came, he might have to face more than one master at the peak of the Sage Realm. There was no need to mention the invincible master behind the Cloud Ink City. If he did not use the puppets, he would not even be a match for a master at the later stage of the Sage Realm. At most, he would be able to resist to a certain extent and stay alive. He was only at the Eternal Realm, and to be able to do this was already considered shocking in the eyes of many. However, at that moment, he felt that his true combat power was not enough at all. He opened the Tianyuan mirror. Inside the Tianyuan mirror, endless hostility spread, trying to break out of the encirclement of the bloodlight. It was the Sword of Avicii. He had used the Sword of Avicii once before, and it had severely injured Wu Zimo. He gritted his teeth. If it was really necessary, he would not be stingy with the Sword of Avicii. All those who wanted to play dirty would have to come and have a taste of his Sword of Avicii to see if it was as sharp as it really was. This was his hidden trump card, and he would not use it unless it was a critical moment because it would consume too much of his energy. However, it would consume a lot of energy, and he could not use it easily, but it did not mean that he could not use it. It was just some side effects, but now he had no other choice. If there was no other way, he would use the Sword of Avicii to kill. Anyone who dares to come will die. Yi Shiwen's tone was firm, and there was endless murderous intent in his eyes. He spread his wings of light behind him, and his whole body turned into a stream of light in an instant, sweeping towards Tai Chi-Tian in the distance. Chapter 25-34. The Cloud Ink City of Tai Chi Heaven had been completely stirred up in the past few days. The city was originally bustling with people. Now that the birthday of the city lord was approaching, people came to congratulate him one after another. Of course, these were all reasons on the surface. In private, no one knew why they came. Since the news that Kuan Pong was in their hands spread out, such people kept coming. Some people came sincerely to congratulate the city lord, while some people naturally came for Kuan Pong. Kuan Pong had a fierce reputation since ancient times. As long as it was born, it was often a ferocious bird that could destroy the world. But now that the young Kuan Pong was captured, many people were naturally interested in many things on Kuan Pong. Not to mention the legendary memory inheritance of Kuan Pong, which belonged to the demon master Kuan Pong of the mythological era, was a treasure that attracted countless people. Because this was the first time that Kuan Pong was captured. They wanted to have such a good opportunity before, but there was no such opportunity at all. So at this moment, they naturally wanted to capture Kuan Peng. Even if Kuan Peng was the disciple of the Hidden Valley this time, it was impossible to really stop the greed of these people. In the Kurfürst Road, one was responsible for one's own life and death. It did not matter whose disciple one was. Since ancient times, were there not many top geniuses who fell here? Many of them had earth-shattering bloodlines, and many of them had shocking bloodlines that had never appeared in the world. However, although being killed could shock them for a while, it was only a momentary shock. It could not really shake them. If they wanted to blame someone, they could only blame themselves for not being good enough and being captured. Otherwise, in a few years, with Kuan Peng's talent, it was enough to dominate the Kurfürst Road and become one of the most terrifying monsters. It might even become a supreme. Who would dare to trouble it? With this thought in mind, many people rushed over from the other upper and middle heavens. For a time, there were countless experts in the city. On this day, the day the birthday banquet was about to begin, a young man in purple entered the city. There was no need to look for him at all. The crowd could lead him to the Cloud Ink City Lord's mansion. Yi Shiwen's divine sense spread out and swept out unscrupulously. The entire Cloud Ink City's City Lord's mansion was like a huge imperial palace. It was magnificent, richly ornamented, and had tall city walls. It was like a small city. He scanned the area but couldn't find the young Kuan Peng's whereabouts. He immediately understood that the young Kuan Peng was probably imprisoned in a sealing enchantment, which should be able to block out the prying of divine consciousness. Otherwise, the Kuan Peng would have found out long ago. Yi Shiwen's expression was indifferent as he followed the stream of people towards the city lord's mansion. With his strength, he easily obtained an invitation and walked in. As a matter of fact, the guards weren't very strict with their checks. There were many people here, and they simply couldn't afford to offend them. Although there were experts at the Tao confirming level-keeping watch, there were always some people who could sneak in. "Let me see what kind of people have come today," Yi Shiwen said coldly. In a spacious secret room, the enchantment was opened. A huge pool of blood was constantly boiling. Golden blood dripped from the body of the Kuan Peng. The huge body of the Kuan Peng was nailed in the air. It was constantly struggling, but every time it struggled, a talisman would explode on its body, injuring it. In front of the Kuan Peng, a middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the Kuan Peng indifferently and said, "Why do you have to suffer like this? As long as you hand over the inheritance, I will naturally give you a quick death," he said coldly. If he wasn't afraid that the self-destruction restriction in the Kuan Peng's mind would activate, he would have already extracted the spirit of the Kuan Peng to check it. His expression was unusually indifferent, without any expression at all. In his eyes, this Kuan Peng's entire body was a treasure. The inheritance in his mind could establish a powerful king's sect. If he was lucky, it might even be possible for him to attain the Tao again. Moreover, his body could be refined into a precious treasure, and his blood was also a great tonic. He had spent a lot of effort to lure the Kuan Peng into the trap. He had even paid a huge price to finally capture the Kuan Peng. Now, it was finally time to reap the harvest. As for those who harbored evil intentions, he was very clear that they had come for the Kuan Peng. However, the Kuan Peng was already in his hands. How could he hand it over? Even if the Hidden Valley sent people to fight for it, it would be useless. This was because he had also invited experts to help him. This time he had to keep the Kuan Peng. The Demon Master's inheritance in the Kuan Peng's bloodline might be able to help them escape from this damned Kurfürst Road. It would allow them to break through and reach a whole new realm. Don't even think about it. You will die. My big brother will definitely not let you off. The Kuan Peng's voice was abnormally weak. However, it was the voice of a young man. Big brother? What big brother? Are you trying to scare me? As far as I know, you are the only one in the Kuan Peng's bloodline. The middle-aged man sneered and said, "Speaking of which, we are also relatives. Our race also has a trace of the Kuan Peng's bloodline. With your blood essence, our entire race can transform into a Kuan Peng. At that time, the glory of the Kuan Peng will be restored. The glory of the ancient demon master will be restored. Isn't this good? Don't resist, and obediently hand over the inheritance. Don't even think about it. Your race is not my race at all. You just use some unknown method to integrate the Kuan-Peng's bloodline into your bloodline. However, a fake will always be fake. It can't be real. You are still lowly, the Kuan-Peng said in a low and weak voice. The middle-aged man's expression suddenly turned ugly. He coldly snorted, and suddenly, countless talismans exploded. The Kuan-Peng was covered in cuts and bruises. This was also a humiliation to their race. They wanted to completely transform into a Kuan-Peng because the Kuan-Peng's bloodline was one of the noblest bloodlines in the world. Their original bloodline was nothing compared to the Kuan-Peng's bloodline. Stubborn. You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. I think I'll have a good talk with you after I send these people away. This middle-aged man was the city lord of Ink Cloud City. He waved his sleeve and instantly disappeared from this secret chamber. The entire city lord's mansion was filled with a joyous atmosphere at this moment. For ordinary people, they didn't know about the various paths in the upper echelons. All they could see was that today was the birthday of the city lord of Ink Cloud City. After cultivating to the level of God, even if they lived as long as the heavens, they still attached great importance to their birthday that was held once every 10,000 years. Yi Shiwen followed the crowd into the city lord's mansion. Because there were too many people who came to congratulate him, the entire birthday banquet was not held indoors. Instead, it was held on a very wide square. This was the place where the juniors of Ink Cloud City usually cultivated. Now, it was vacated to hold the birthday banquet. Yi Shiwen found a table and sat down. He waited quietly and suppressed the killing intent in his heart. The crowd around him was moving. Countless people were discussing this matter in annoyance. There were constantly juniors of Ink Cloud City shuttling back and forth, either serving dishes or refilling wine. The atmosphere was already very lively even before the banquet started. Yi Shiwen closed his eyes and sensed the surroundings. He could clearly feel that there were several auras looming in the surroundings. They were not ordinary auras, but very powerful auras that were hidden in the surroundings. Even he felt very afraid of them. However, he didn't say anything. He just smiled coldly. In his eyes, these people were no different from dead people. The waiters in the square were constantly announcing the names of the big shots who came. From time to time, it would cause many people to exclaim. They were all big shots of the Tai Chi heavens who hadn't shown their faces for many years. They were experts of the Sage realm. Many of them were even top experts from other heavens. At this time, they appeared one after another. Many people sighed with emotion. The rallying power of Ink Cloud City Governor is really great. There are actually so many people coming to congratulate Guizhou. However, not everyone knew that most of these people had probably come for the sake of the young rock and not the Ink Cloud City Governor. Even those who knew about it kept their mouths shut. They hoped that the fewer people who knew about it, the better. This way they would have a better chance. But soon, the atmosphere of this festive birthday banquet suddenly changed. Friend, why didn't you say that you came to our Ink Cloud City as a guest? Just as everyone was drinking, they only saw a huge hand suddenly grabbing out from the void, grabbing toward another part of the void. In that part of the void, a figure fell out, but before he could dodge, he was grabbed to death by the huge hand. Many people didn't know what had happened, and it was already over. But Yi Shiwen saw it clearly. Everything was within the range of his eye of redemption. That figure was clearly an expert of the Sage realm. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos, to kill his way into the city lord's residence and find the Kuan-Peng. But who knew that he would be discovered and killed? Such strength could not be said to be weak. Yi Shiwen secretly thought that if he didn't guess wrong, this should be the expert at the peak of the Sage realm who was in charge of the Ink Cloud City. Only such an expert could casually pinch a Sage realm expert to death. Finally willing to show up? Yi Shiwen sneered. What the hell is going on? Many people who didn't know the inside story were curious. Why would someone want to make trouble at the birthday banquet? Could it be to assassinate the Ink Cloud City Lord? If that was the case, it would be too stupid. There were so many experts present. Wouldn't he be courting death by doing this? But there were also many people who knew the truth. At this moment, they couldn't help but gasp. Although they had heard rumors about the expert behind the Ink Cloud City, they couldn't help but be a little scared when they saw him in action. However, they were also very clear that today's show had just begun. Chapter 2535. Many people were well aware of the rocks incident, but at this moment, this move had frightened a considerable number of experts. This was also the objective of Ink Cloud City. As the saying went, hitting a person who was down was the nature of almost all living beings. If these people weren't deterred, then even if they were really here to attend the birthday banquet, they would inevitably bare their fangs in the end. After all, the rocks incident was too eye-catching. Those with discerning eyes understood very well that this was a show of might. What exactly happened? How did this happen? Generally speaking, even if someone came to cause trouble, they would rarely choose to kill under such circumstances. They didn't give any chance to explain at all. Everyone wasn't a fool, and they quickly realized that there was definitely something wrong with this. However, at this moment, they were also waiting to see what would happen, and no one wanted to stand out. The Ink Cloud City Governor has arrived. Along with a drawn-out voice, a figure slowly appeared in front of everyone, and it was none other than the Ink Cloud City Governor. Many people immediately stood up to greet him and salute him. "Thank you, everyone, for attending my birthday banquet. It's my honor." The Ink Cloud City Governor cupped his hands and said to the surroundings after sitting on his seat, "Congratulations, City Governor, for your boundless longevity. Congratulations, City Governor, for your boundless fortune." Everyone congratulated him. The Ink Cloud City Governor looked around and said, "Although there was some unpleasantness today, I believe it's just some small fry. Everyone don't mind it. Today is my birthday banquet, and no one will leave until they're drunk." Ink Cloud City Governor, "I'm afraid the other party isn't a small fry. As far as I know, your Ink Cloud City seems to have caught a rock. Is that true?" Someone spoke using ventriloquism, and the voice appeared in all directions. It was impossible to find out who exactly said this. "What? A rock? Why is there a rock?" "Dafa, it can't really be a rock, right?" Many people's eyes lit up. Then, the originally quiet scene suddenly exploded and became completely chaotic. Many people didn't know why the atmosphere was so strange today. Many people didn't look like they were here to celebrate the birthday. Now, everything became clear. So it turned out that they'd come for the rock. If it was an ordinary thing, then threatening Ink Cloud City for some sort of treasure of the heavens and the earth would probably not be a good idea. But the rock was different, and it might be related to the secret of becoming an Emperor Realm expert. Such a fortuitous encounter was rare. If they were outside the Kerfus Road, they might attract the crazy attacks of the Hidden Valley Watchers. But here, even the Hidden Valley Watchers were useless. King-ranked experts couldn't enter and could only watch from the outside. If they had the ability, they could charge into the Kerfus Road. As long as there were no king-ranked experts who charged into the Kerfus Road, the Cloud Ink City would not be easy to deal with. I don't know where you got this information, but I can tell you that there's no such thing. Although the City Lord of Cloud Ink City had expected this to happen, he was still in a bad mood when he saw it for himself. But he couldn't figure out who said it. This person spoke with divine thoughts, and he was really too cunning. "Don't lie to us. Do you really think we have nothing better to do than to come here to celebrate your birthday?" Someone said unceremoniously in the dark. "That's right. Hand over the rock. Such a fierce beast is not something you can touch at all." "Yes, hand over the rock. It seems that you've come prepared," the City Lord of Cloud Ink City said coldly, "but you'd better think it through. Don't blame me for being impolite if you cause trouble at my birthday banquet. You don't have to scare us. Everyone knows very well who's in the right and who's in the wrong. We also know very well whether you've caught the rock or not. Hand it over obediently." Someone said again, "You're courting death." The City Lord of Cloud Ink City snorted coldly, and a shocking light burst out from his eyes. He grabbed out with his big hand and directly pulled a huge, fierce beast out of the crowd. The expert at the early stage of the imperishable realm was grabbed by him, and he turned into a cloud of blood mist in the air. He was the one who spoke earlier. Even though it wasn't all of them, he was still one of them. Whoever's making noise will suffer the same fate as him. The City Lord of Cloud Ink City spoke coldly and emotionlessly, yet he had such confidence. Most of the people present were utterly unable to arouse the slightest thought of resisting because it had already exceeded the limits of their strength. You don't have to scare us. Do you really think we're afraid of you? That's right. Old geezer, don't go too far. You're courting death. However, many voices rebounded back in an even more intense manner. The expression of the city, Lord of Cloud, Ink City, became even more unsightly. These people had obviously grasped the principle that the law couldn't be enforced when there were too many, and they'd come to cause trouble. Yet he couldn't do anything about it. Many people started to discuss this matter in secret. According to this situation, it was very likely that the matter of Cloud Ink City capturing the rock was true. It was possible for a single person to make a mistake, but so many people had obviously come for the rock, so it was impossible for them to make a mistake. If you want to cause trouble on my birthday banquet, then come out. I'll take care of all of you. The city lord of Cloud Ink City instantly stood up from his throne, and his gaze swept towards the crowd. In an instant, his boundless divine sense swept out, and it directly scanned over 100 people amongst the thousands of people that had come to attend the birthday banquet in a formidable array. It was the person who spoke in secret just now. Even though he alone was unable to pay attention to so many people, there were many experts from Cloud Ink City present, and he completely found all those people and notified the city lord of Cloud Ink City. There were experts from various races amongst the 100 people that were pointed out, but they had a common characteristic, and that was that they were all formidable experts at the Tao validation realm or above. If it wasn't for that, they wouldn't dare to get involved in this matter. No matter if it was the side of Cloud Ink City or the side of the rock, they weren't existences that ordinary people could afford to offend. Such a force couldn't be called a small force no matter where it was. Even though he hadn't found all of them, it was already considered to be a very large force. Old geezer, what are you trying to do? Everyone, let's attack together. There's no need to be afraid of them. This time, Cloud Ink City can be considered to have incurred public wrath. They want to take the rock for themselves? Dream on? When these 100 people saw that they couldn't continue hiding, they naturally couldn't be bothered to do so. As experts at the Tao validation realm, they naturally had such confidence, and they represented a force behind them. Moreover, they didn't believe that Cloud Ink City dared to offend so many forces at the same time. But obviously, they'd underestimated Cloud Ink City's current determination. In order to protect the rock and realize the plan of transforming their entire race into rock, they'd already gone completely mad. All right, since all of you want to die, then don't blame me for not holding back. I'll send all of you to heaven. The city lord of Cloud Ink City spoke coldly, and his eyes were filled with extreme horror. Bang! The entire divine kingdom was instantly released, and it enveloped the entire square. What? You actually dare to attack? Bastard, do you know the consequences of doing this? Are you crazy? Instantly, there was a wave of shouting, and those who weren't included in the 100 people retreated successively and didn't dare to approach. They directly left the square. Let's go. We have 100 people, so why should we be afraid of him? Someone shouted loudly. All of them realized that this time, Cloud Ink City would absolutely not back down. Although they didn't have any powerful experts among them, they had many people, and this was their greatest advantage. Bang! 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 Countless powerful auras swept up in the sky, forming a terrifying astral wind that raged out. Countless divinities erupted with brilliant light, and the power that erupted from the joint forces of 100 experts at the Tao validation realm could be imagined how terrifying it was. The heavens and the earth were shaking, and it was like the terrifying scene of an earth dragon turning over. Rumble! All the attacks landed in front of the city lord of Cloud Ink City, and they directly exploded, sweeping up a boundless energy frenzy, and at that instant, a large area of the space shattered. That terrifying attack attracted everyone's attention. However, more people cried out in surprise. There were many people present with good eyesight, and they clearly saw that all the attacks were stopped by a barrier when they rushed to the city lord of Cloud Ink City. They didn't hurt him at all. Then, a bloody light soared into the sky, and a powerful expert at the peak of immortal level was grabbed to death on the spot. A figure flashed in front of him, This person was none other than the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City. However, this was just the beginning. The City Lord of Cloud, Ink City's attack was like a tidal wave, and it was extremely fast. There were only a few people who could see it on the spot. Many people didn't even see what happened at all, and they found that the 100 people suddenly exploded and were slaughtered in an instant. By the time many people reacted, only the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City was left in the void. Everyone was as silent as a cicada in winter, and a pin drop could be heard. Everyone was shocked by such a ferocious way of doing things, and they more or less thought that the law couldn't punish the masses. Who would have thought that the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City would really kill all of them? Not only did these 100 people represent themselves, but they also represented the major forces that had yet to show themselves. Even the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City, couldn't bear to offend so many major forces in one go. Who else wants to come? I'll send him to hell as well. The City Lord of Cloud, Ink City, said coldly, and there was a hint of madness in his eyes. All of you must become the blood sacrifice for my clan's transformation and become the witness of my clan's supreme glory. I'll do it. A lazy voice resounded from outside the battlefield, and then a violet-robed young man slowly walked out from the crowd and into the battlefield. He walked directly into the divine kingdom of the city governor of Ink Cloud City without the slightest scruple. Chapter 2536. The sudden appearance of this purple-robed young man instantly attracted everyone's attention. Who are you? The City Lord's gaze was icy cold as he glanced at Yi Shiwen and asked. I'm here to ask you something, Yi Shiwen said indifferently. His tone was flat, as if he was talking about someone else's matter, and it didn't change because of the City Lord. Today is my birthday banquet. If you're willing to give me face, then we'll talk about it after today's banquet. The City Lord couldn't figure out Yi Shiwen's objective, so he didn't dare to make a move casually. Everyone was very clear that the City Lord's meaning was that if Yi Shiwen wasn't willing to give him face, then don't blame him for falling out. Everyone shook their heads helplessly when they heard the words of the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City, that were filled with killing intent. If they were still doubting whether the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City dared to make a move earlier, then they were definitely not doubtful anymore now. Face? What face do you have? Why should I give you face? Yi Shiwen said coldly. Everyone was in an uproar. Didn't this purple-robed young man see how the City Lord looked when he started a massacre? Does he want to completely infuriate the City Lord? The City Lord stared fixedly at Yi Shiwen, and his face revealed a hideous and distorted expression as he said coldly, Since I became the City Lord of Ink Cloud City, no one has ever dared to say such words to me. Looks like you're really tired of living. As soon as he finished speaking, dozens of powerful experts appeared around Yi Shiwen. They were the ones who were hiding in the crowd just now. However, they didn't have the opportunity to attack because all of them were killed by the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City. Now, they had made a move and surrounded Yi Shiwen. That's because you haven't met me. Today, I'm here to destroy your place and take your life. The purple-robed young man spoke arrogantly with a cold expression, and he didn't take the City Lord seriously at all. Instantly, everyone was shocked. After seeing the ruthless methods of the City Lord of Ink Cloud City, this purple-robed young man still dared to be so arrogant. Could it be that he has some trump card that he hasn't shown? Good, good, good. The City Lord of Ink Cloud City said good 3 times, and he was so angry that he gnashed his teeth with a livid expression. If he couldn't deal with this damnable fellow today, then his Ink Cloud City would be completely humiliated. Boom! A terrifying divinity surged out from the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City, and the terrifying aura instantly turned into boundless gales and storms. Compared to before, his strength was actually a notch higher. Everyone was extremely astounded when they saw this, because the city governor of Ink Cloud City actually didn't use his full strength earlier, and this was unbelievable in their opinion. Old bastard, I'll ask you again. Hand over the rock, and I can let you go. He completely ignored the aura that erupted from the Cloud, Ink City Lord. He also completely ignored the fact that he was in the divine kingdom of the Cloud, Ink City Lord. Kill him. The city lord of Ink Cloud City roared furiously, and the dozens of powerful experts pounced towards Yishuan. Among these people, the weakest was at the demigod peak, and they could compete with Dao confirmation experts. There were even many Eternal Realm experts among them. It could be said that all the elites of the Ink Cloud City had come out, and the Ink Cloud City was also well prepared. They didn't come to deal with Yi Shiwen, but to deal with the experts from various forces who came to pressure them. This time, they had already made up their mind that even if they had to go against the whole world, they had to facilitate this matter and transform the entire clan into the Rock bloodline. In that case, their clan would usher in a brand new glory. After transforming into the Rock bloodline, their cultivation would also become smooth. Yi Shiwen didn't dodge at all, and it was as if he was bound by the god rule chains around him. At that moment, the infinite laws of the divine kingdom turned into chains and entangled him. All the laws were completely ineffective at this moment, and only the city lord of Ink Cloud City was the only true god. Rumble! These attacks blasted directly into the body of the young man in the purple robe, but everyone was shocked to find that these attacks couldn't do anything to the young man in the purple robe at all. It could even be said that all these attacks blasted into the void. The space around the young man in the purple robe was like a black hole, devouring all the attacks. Everyone was too familiar with this scene. It was the special technique of the Eternal Realm. But how could he still use this move unscathed when he was suppressed by the divine kingdom of the Sage Realm? At this moment, the elites that had been accumulated in the Ink Cloud City for hundreds of thousands of years all flew out and pounced in front of Yishuan. They were about to form a matrix in an instant and work together to break the space around Yishuan. At this moment, countless flames suddenly burst out of Yi Shiwen's body, burning fiercely. It completely ignored the control of the city Lord of Ink Cloud City on the laws, burning fiercely. Several experts who were close to him only had time to use their power tools to protect themselves, and they were devoured by the flames. However, these flames instantly burned the divine weapons on them into a pool of hot molten iron, and the moment the divine weapons were broken, they were also burning fiercely. After a while, they were burned to ashes amid screams. The rest of them took the opportunity to escape. When they were far away, they looked at the few powerhouses who had been burned alive in horror. There were demigods, immortal levels, and even immortal levels among them. However, they were all burned into ashes. There was no difference whether their strength was high or low. It was just that the stronger ones would burn for a slightly longer time. Everyone couldn't help but gasp when they saw the miserable state of these Cloud Ink City experts. They stared at Yishuan with horrified eyes. That's the Phoenix Clan's Nanming mythical fire. You're from the Phoenix Clan? The city lord of Ink Cloud City cried out involuntarily. If it was that behemoth, then it would be troublesome. In the ancient Phoenix realm, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Even if it was severely injured, it was still more terrifying than the Hidden Valley. The Nanming mythical fire was the symbolic flame of the Phoenix Clan. Disregarding those people from before, this time it could be considered that there was a true behemoth expert involved. Sir, we in the ancient Phoenix realm have minded our own business, and we've never offended the ancient Phoenix realm. Do you want to fight to the death with us? The city lord of Ink Cloud City said. They might have a way to deal with ordinary forces, but if a behemoth like the ancient Phoenix realm were to take action, the consequences would be too severe. They could continuously deploy experts from other places. Finally, a trace of uneasiness rose in his heart. Who I am has nothing to do with you. I just want to ask if you're going to hand over Kuan Peng. If you're not going to hand over Kuan Peng, then no one will be spared today. You can be removed from the ancient Phoenix realm in the future. Yi Shiwen sneered. His words were even more arrogant than before. However, no one would treat his words as a joke anymore. The Ink Cloud City might have considerable strength. However, this expert in front of them, who was suspected to be from the ancient Phoenix realm, not only had a terrifying cultivation, but also represented a behemoth like the ancient Phoenix realm. Don't push it too far. The eyes of the city lord of Ink Cloud City were fixed on Yi Shiwen, who was wrapped in a layer of flame in the sky. He noticed that his holy kingdom could not extend in. This ball of flame had blocked the penetration of the Holy Kingdom. This was something that had never happened before. It was not that he had not encountered those heavenly flames in the past, but none of them could block his Holy Kingdom. That was because even the heavenly flames were a type of flame. Since it was a flame, it had to follow the rules of fire. As long as the rules of fire were removed from his Holy Kingdom, no matter what kind of flame it would not be able to burn. Then this kind of heaven and earth would be destroyed in the future. This was something that could be done by experts of the sage realm, and it was also their greatest reliance. In front of them, no matter what rules they cultivated, it was impossible to get away with it. Even if the ancient Phoenix realm is said to be extremely powerful in the outside world, it's impossible for you to dominate the Kurfürst Road. The city lord of Ink Cloud City said coldly, but he did not take action directly. He was even more fearful of the ancient Phoenix realm. Don't talk nonsense with me. You even dared to capture Kuenping. What's there to talk about? Yi Shiwen was too lazy to talk to him. Then you can die. The pupils of the city lord of Ink Cloud City suddenly shrank, and then instantly enlarged. His body appeared in front of Yi Shiwen without a sound, and a slap directly slapped toward Yi Shiwen. With his strength, it was too easy for him to kill an Eternal Realm silently. Ordinary Eternal Realm experts could not keep up with his speed at all, let alone in the Holy Nation. Bang! At the critical moment, Yi Shiwen actually reacted. He raised his hand and fiercely slapped the city lord of Ink Cloud City. However, to everyone's surprise, it was not Yi Shiwen who was sent flying. Instead, it was the city lord of Ink Cloud City who was sent flying in the void. He kept somersaulting, and a huge crack appeared in the void because of his body. It was imaginable how much force he had endured. Ah! The city lord of Ink Cloud City originally only let out a muffled groan, but he suddenly screamed. Everyone saw that his entire arm was suddenly burning with Nanmingli fire, and it was burning fiercely. Moreover, it was spreading at a shocking speed, and it was about to burn his entire body alive in a charcoal. Bang! At this critical moment, the city lord of Ink Cloud City broke one of his arms, and his entire arm was broken from the shoulder. Blood splattered, and it rained blood in the void. This barely stopped the flames from continuing to spread to other parts of his body, and he got a chance to breathe. Chapter 2537. Yi Shiwen had severely injured the city lord of Ink Cloud City with a single blow. Even the craziest person didn't expect that the city lord of Ink Cloud City would almost be killed with a single blow. How could it go on like this? Even the people who were used to seeing life and death were stunned by his ruthless strength. Even in the Tai Chi Tian, the city lord of Ink Cloud City could still be regarded as a first-class expert. In the Tai Chi Tian, there weren't many who dared to say that they could defeat the city lord of Ink Cloud City. Everyone was dumbfounded. When Yi Shiwen attacked just now, they only felt that this person's strength was extraordinary, but they didn't expect that he would be so strong. The city lord of Ink Cloud City was in an extremely sorry state. His figure tore a huge crack in the void before he stopped. Hand over the rock, or the entire Ink Cloud City will be annihilated today. Yi Shiwen's expression was cold, and his eyes seemed to have lost their spirit. However, this was the most terrifying appearance. You're provoking the entire Tai Chi Tian. Do you really think that there are no experts in the Tai Chi Tian? At this moment, the city lord of Ink Cloud City said forcefully, because his final trump card hadn't appeared yet. Who do you think you are to represent the Tai Chi Tian? Today, let alone the Tai Chi Tian, even if the Kurfürst Road is my enemy, I'll take the rock away. I've already given you a chance, but since you don't cherish it, then die obediently. As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, his figure had already appeared in front of the city lord of Ink Cloud City. A pair of wings flapped behind him, and he slapped towards the city lord of Ink Cloud City. Bang! The city lord of Ink Cloud City didn't even have time to react before he was slapped away, because he didn't feel any traces of spatial fluctuations at all, so he wasn't on guard at all. How could his movement technique be so fast? However, he didn't know that Yi Shiwen's light wings were about to evolve into space wings. Yi Shiwen's understanding of the power of space was far superior to ordinary Sage Realm experts. Therefore, the City Lord of Cloud, Ink City, didn't feel anything at all. Gosh, how can he be so strong? Today, Ink Cloud City is completely screwed. It's over. This time, it's going to be big. Everyone felt that it was truly too unreal. And it was as if they were dreaming, because the Ink Cloud City's governor hadn't even done anything before being beaten down. Many of the people present weren't on good terms with Cloud Ink City or had conflicts of interest. They were willing to see such a scene from the bottom of their hearts. Even if Cloud Ink City didn't die this time, its prestige would suffer a great fall, and this was beneficial to them. Ah, you're courting death. The City Lord of Ink Cloud City felt extremely humiliated. He roared crazily, and his holy kingdom unfolded instantly. He wanted to confront Yi Shiwen head-on. Suddenly, he saw a big clean hand grabbing in from outside the void and crushed the holy kingdom. Then it grabbed the neck of the City Lord of Ink Cloud City. Like grabbing a dead dog, it clutched his neck, and the aura that was about to erupt in his body was suppressed all of a sudden. The word seal fell from the sky and sealed his whole body. The word seal was ridiculously powerful, and the City Lord of Ink Cloud City couldn't break free at all. The strength in his whole body was restrained in his body, and he couldn't move at all. His eyes were full of horror as he looked at Yi Shiwen. There was actually such a monster. From the beginning to the end, Yi Shiwen had almost casually defeated him and cleanly destroyed him. He understood that he'd kicked an iron plate this time. He'd been too careless, and he should have asked the great elder behind him to make a move at the first possible moment. But he had wanted to establish his might, wanted to establish supreme prestige. But in the end, he had failed miserably. He had been captured like a dead dog by an imperishable realm junior. It was an unparalleled humiliation. From now on, not to mention establishing prestige, it would be an extravagant hope if he could maintain his original prestige. Hand it over obediently, or you're dead today, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Although he was decisive in killing, he was not a homicidal maniac. It would be best if he didn't have to kill to solve the problem. More importantly, he didn't want to waste any more time. The matter of the hundreds of masters joining forces to attack seemed like a joke, but in fact it represented the many forces that were interested in the rock. There were indigenous people who were born and raised here, and there were also foreign superforces. There were many masters among these forces. At the moment, there were only gods in the eternal realm and the eternal realm. But as time went on, it was inevitable that there would be many existences at the later stage of the Sage Realm, and even those at the peak of the Sage Realm. When that time came, there would really be a big problem. He had to end the battle quickly and leave as soon as possible. His face was livid, and he shouted, "Great Elder, are you still not going to make a move?" "Stubborn," Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. Looking at him, he knew that the City Lord of Ink Cloud City was going to resist until the end. "Do you think someone can save you?" How ridiculous! As soon as he reached out, the City Lord of Ink Cloud City immediately found it difficult to even breathe. "Stop!" Suddenly, a cold shout came from the void above the vault of heaven. Then, a big hand tore the space apart and clawed towards Yi Shiwen's direction. "Humph!" Yi Shiwen snorted coldly, and his whole body moved hundreds of miles away as if he had teleported, avoiding the big hand. An old man slowly walked down from the sky, staring at Yi Shiwen with cold eyes. In the beginning, it was he who had made a move and killed the guy who wanted to sneak in with a slap. His strength could be said to be unfathomable. "Young man, if you put him down now, we can still negotiate," the old man said coldly. If it was an ordinary person, he wouldn't care. But it was the City Lord of Ink Cloud City, and he couldn't let it go. Hand over the rock, and everything can be discussed. Yi Shiwen didn't talk nonsense. This old man seemed to have more authority than the City Lord of Ink Cloud City. "What's your relationship with the rock?" the old man asked coldly. "You don't need to know that. Hand over the recoil shock, or he will die." Yi Shiwen shook his head, and he didn't intend to say it. "You're courting death," the old man shouted coldly, and instantly rushed out. Fast, fast, fast. It was simply fast to the extreme, and he rushed to Yi Shiwen in an instant. With just his own speed, he was extremely fast. A hand knife chopped toward Yi Shiwen's arm, and he wanted to cut Yi Shiwen's arm in half on the spot to rescue him. Yi Shiwen's reaction wasn't slow either. Since this old man came out, he had been extremely careful and didn't relax for a moment. This old man's hand knife was simply much more terrifying than ordinary divine weapons. Yi Shiwen didn't think much, and he directly blocked the city Lord of Ink Cloud City in his hand. Ah! But only a scream was heard, and the city Lord of Ink Cloud City was cut into half on the spot. His body was cut into half, and his spirit was destroyed. He was killed instantly. The strength of the great elder of Cloud Ink City had already reached a terrifying realm. Even the city governor of Cloud Ink City, a first-class expert like Tai Chi Tian, was no match for him. How dare you? The great elder of Ink Cloud City was fuming with anger. Not only did this move not save Yi Shiwen, but it had also killed the city lord of Ink Cloud City. This alone could be said to be a great blow to the vitality of Ink Cloud City. It should be known that Ink Cloud City seemed to have a lot of masters, but in reality, they were far less powerful than the Z family of Yindu. Apart from himself, the only master above the Sage Realm was the city lord of Ink Cloud City. The two of them were supporting the situation of Ink Cloud City, and now that one of them was dead, it was equivalent to the collapse of a pillar. Such a loss could not be said to be small. Yi Shiwen sneered, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. This was the moment. He had been waiting for this opportunity since just now. Since he knew that there might be a master at the peak of the Sage Realm behind Ink Cloud City, he had been planning how to kill this old man as soon as possible. If people knew that he was actually planning to kill a master at the peak of the Sage Realm, they would definitely think that Yi Shiwen had gone mad. Masters at the peak of the Sage Realm were also the top masters in the Kurfürst Road. Although there were strong and weak ones among them, even the weakest one was far more terrifying than people imagined. Just now, the great elder of Ink Cloud City had shown such terrifying cultivation, and Yi Shiwen actually wanted to plot against them. Roar! A loud, beastly roar came from Yi Shiwen's body. At that critical moment, a huge, iron-skinned beast claw leaped out of the void and grabbed the great elder of Cloud Ink City. Because its speed was swift to the extreme, it seemed to be slightly faster than the Grand Elder of Ink Cloud City, and even the Grand Elder of Ink Cloud City wasn't able to react completely. Even though he immediately dodged, the beast's claw still tore through the layers of space and grabbed onto his body, tearing out a large piece of flesh from his lower abdomen. What was that just now? Everyone was dumbfounded. After all that had happened, the sky seemed to have just responded. Between the two of them, the space was torn by the beast's claw, and finally a crack appeared. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the Grand Elder of Cloud Ink City, who was drenched in blood. A large piece of flesh had been torn off his abdomen, and his internal organs could be seen. That bloody scene caused everyone to shudder with fear. What caused them to shudder with fear wasn't this bloody scene, but who was capable of injuring the Grand Elder of Ink Cloud City. That was the peak of the Sage Realm. They were already standing at the peak of all the Sage Realm, and even ordinary late-stage Sage Realm cultivators would not be able to hurt them. Yi Shiwen actually had a trump card on him, and he had been holding back and not using it. He was really too scheming. It was too fast just now. I didn't even see clearly what happened. He still has such a trump card. No wonder he dared to come looking for trouble. Coming here today is really worth it. Ink Cloud City is going to be in big trouble. Chapter 2538. Many people became excited. Perhaps they would be able to witness a shocking battle today. It had been a long time since they had seen such a battle. One side was a master at the peak of the Sage Realm, while the other side was not, but still had means that could rival a master at the peak of the Sage Realm. Such a battle was rare. No wonder Yi Shiwen had no fear even when facing a powerful master at the peak of the Sage Realm. It turned out that he had such means. What means did you use? What are you hiding in your body? The chief elder of the Cloud Ink City had profound cultivation, and he was the first to react. He could vaguely see that the beast claw had come out of Yi Shiwen's body. He didn't care that a large piece of flesh had been scratched off his body. This wasn't a big deal. After a while, he had almost recovered. However, he couldn't figure out Yi Shiwen's background, and this made him a little fearful. The Cloud Ink City's city lord had already failed miserably, and he couldn't fail miserably as well. Otherwise, it would be too shameful. If you want to know, then come and see for yourself. Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer. His eyes were extremely cold. He did not want to delay any longer. Whoosh! The Thunder Dragon halberd in his hand instantly shot out. It turned into a thunder dragon and broke through the sky, directly attacking the chief elder of the Cloud Ink City. Whoosh! The chief elder of the Cloud Ink City's holy kingdom instantly unfolded. Yi Shiwen instantly felt as if he had fallen into mud, unable to move forward at all. Compared to the chief elder of the Cloud Ink City's holy kingdom, the city lord of the Cloud Ink City's holy kingdom was far inferior. Now, even Yi Shiwen felt that it was troublesome. However, it was just troublesome. The light wings behind him spread out, and his speed was extremely fast. The Thunder Dragon halberd only dragged a bolt of lightning in the sky, and it had already slashed in front of the chief elder of the Cloud Ink City. Bang! The chief elder of the Cloud Ink City raised his hand and created a barrier, blocking the Thunder Dragon halberd. At the same time, the beast claw in Yi Shiwen's body grabbed out again, grabbing at the chief elder of the Cloud Ink City. The previous attack was a feint, and this was the real attack. Do you think I didn't guard against this? The great elder of Cloud Ink City had just suffered a great loss, so how could he not be on guard at all? He immediately sneered, and the divinity on his body formed a big hand that collided head-on with the beast's claw. Bang! Both sides collided fiercely, setting off an endless frenzy. Just when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen's attack had failed, they discovered that this beast claw had actually crushed the divinity of the great elder of the Cloud Ink City. Then it once again grabbed towards the great elder of the Cloud Ink City. Ah! The Grand Elder of Ink Cloud City let out a shrill cry as half of his body was almost crushed by the beast's claw. He only had the time to jump out swiftly before he swallowed a medicinal pill right away, and the injuries on his body healed at a shocking speed. His eyes were fixed on Yi Shiwen. He was in an incomparably awkward situation. He was particularly depressed in his heart. He had miscalculated. He had miscalculated again. The beast claw inside Yi Shiwen's body was more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Not only was it powerful, but the iron-skinned beast claw seemed to be made of a very special material. Therefore, it could easily break his divinity. It was like brine dipping into tofu. No one knew why, but rather than saying that his divinity was broken, it was better to say that his divinity was melted. He could feel that it should not be a living creature, as it did not have any characteristics that a living creature should have. He did not feel a single breath of life, but its power was so terrifying. With his many years of experience, he could easily guess what it was. "It's a puppet," he shouted. At this moment, everyone only knew what the beast claw was. It turned out to be a type of puppet. However, everyone was even more shocked. Puppets were not rare, and there were many legacies of cultivating puppets in the Kerfus Road. However, those that could cultivate puppets to the point that they could fight against the peak of the Sage Plain were extremely rare. They had already climbed to the peak of this path. Where did he get this puppet from? Or was he actually a puppet master? If he really was a puppeteer, then it would be terrifying. It was common knowledge that the strength of a puppeteer lay in the puppets, and there was often a gap between the strength of the puppets themselves and that of the puppets. Some were even worlds apart. Even so, Yi Shiwen's achievements were obvious to all. It was not difficult for him to deal with ordinary Sage Realm cultivators. Everyone stared at Yi Shiwen, wanting to see the legendary puppet that was said to be able to fight against the pinnacle of the Sage Plain. There were even many who revealed greedy looks. If it were an ordinary cultivator, their strength would have been tyrannical, and it would have been impossible for them to get their hands on it. However, the puppet was different. If they could get their hands on the puppet, wouldn't they immediately have the strength and qualifications to fight against the pinnacle of the Sage Plain? Just thinking about it made him feel excited. and his blood was boiling. Although he knew that this secret could not be kept for long, Yishuan was still a little surprised that the chief elder of Cloud Ink City saw through it after only 2 sneak attacks. The chief elder had cultivated for so many years. Not only was he powerful, but his eyesight was also hard for Yishuan to catch up with. He was very knowledgeable. I didn't expect you to see through it, but it's useless. Today is the day you die. Yi Shiwen's expression was cold, and he did not panic just because his trump card was seen through. So this is your trump card, but it's useless. A puppet will always be a puppet. No matter how powerful a puppet is, it is still a puppet. It can't fight against a real living thing. After knowing Yi Shiwen's trump card, the chief elder of Cloud Ink City relaxed. The real horror was the unknown. Go to hell. A sword appeared in the hand of the great elder of the Cloud Ink City, and he slashed it down towards Yi Shiwen. It was a miraculous move. It didn't have any superfluous means, but it gave off a feeling of endless vicissitudes. This move was not any kind of move, but it contained all his understanding of martial arts, reaching the point where no move was better than any move. And suddenly, a huge ferocious beast jumped out of Yi Shiwen's body. It raised its claw and blocked the sneak attack of the sword. Then, the claw counterattacked on the spot, attacking the chief elder of Cloud Ink City. It turned out to be an ancient martial art, but it did not belong to the kind of martial art that ordinary people knew. Instead, it was a kind of martial art of a primitive beast, and it was very exquisite. This puppet beast was not fabricated out of thin air, but it was modified according to the wild beast. Under this claw, it broke some and tore the sky. It was such an attack just now that made the chief elder of Cloud Ink City suffer a big loss twice. Bang! The sword aura instantly swept across the heaven and earth, and the chief elder of Cloud Ink City waved his sword to resist. There were stars everywhere, as if night had fallen, and only his sword light was flickering between the heaven and earth. This sword light shrouded Yi Shiwen, and instantly broke the claw of the wild beast. Clang! The sword and the wild beast collided directly, and both sides were evenly matched. In fact, the wild beast even had the upper hand. The hand of the chief elder of Cloud Ink City that was holding the sword trembled a little. In the fight just now, he was directly injured by the strange strength of the wild beast. The wild beast itself had infinite strength, and it could strike down the sun, moon, and stars. Not to mention, it had been modified countless times with excellent divine materials, which made it even more terrifying. The body of the wild beast was still releasing a kind of flame, as if it was going to jump out of its body. It was none other than the purple-green lotus flame. If one wanted to drive the wild beast, ordinary treasures and ordinary energy were completely useless, and it could only be possible by using such precious divine materials. At this moment, both of them did not hold back in their attacks because they could not hold back. They were facing an opponent of the same level, and it was a life-and-death battle. So how could they hold back? The energy waves that swept out directly annihilated countless barriers. The people outside the battlefield also felt that this attack was like the end of the world, and it almost scared them to death. They retreated repeatedly and hurriedly left Cloud Ink City. And in the battlefield, both sides had no intention of leaving. One wanted to protect the Kuan Peng, and the other came for the Kuan Peng. As expected, the battlefield was set in the city. Die! At this moment, the chief elder of Cloud Ink City could not care about Yi Shiwen anymore. He went all out and placed all his attention on the wild beast puppet in front of him. He knew that if he was distracted, it was very likely that he would be killed by this beast. On the contrary, as long as he killed this beast, then Yi Shiwen would not be a concern. In an instant, he had already distinguished between good and bad. His sword was like an antelope hanging its horn, and it slashed towards the wild beast puppet from the most impossible angle. There was almost no appearance of a sword technique, but it actually caused the heavens and the earth to tremble, and the laws of the heavens and the earth swooped down along with it. Such a scene was truly shocking. The desolate beast puppet was not to be trifled with. The desolate beast laws on its body were ignited, and they rushed out to evolve into a huge shadow that blocked the sword momentum of the Cloud Ink City's Grand Elder. Boom! Such a collision almost destroyed Cloud Ink City. If it was not for the support of many barriers in the city, it would probably be instantly razed to the ground. Many people in the city were fleeing out of the city in panic. Their strength was very weak, and they did not dare to go near it all. And Yi Shiwen had no intention of continuing to be entangled with him. Instead, he spread out his divine senses and took advantage of the fact that the barriers and arrays were completely shattered to find the whereabouts of the young Kuan-Peng. As expected, Yi Shiwen soon found the place where the young Kuan-Peng was imprisoned. In a secret chamber, when Yi Shiwen saw the miserable state of the young Kuan-Peng, he immediately became furious. Damn it! He rushed towards the secret chamber where the young Kuan-Peng was imprisoned. And at this moment, the chief elder of Cloud Ink City, who was being held back by the wild beast puppet, roared, "Stop him and kill him. I will share half of the Kuan-Peng's blood essence with you." Chapter 2539. Stop him and kill him. I will give you half of the Kuan-Peng's blood essence. The great elder of the Cloud Ink City roared anxiously when he saw Yi Shiwen was about to rescue the Kuan-Peng. He wanted to get rid of the wild beast puppet in front of him, but he couldn't. He didn't know what this wild beast puppet was made of, but it was terrifyingly tough. Both sides had fought for thousands of times in an instant, and each time was more terrifying than the last. However, no matter how terrifying his sword light was, he couldn't break the wild beast puppet's defense. On the contrary, the situation began to favor the wild beast puppet gradually. It was a fighting machine, and there was only fighting in its mind. The aggressive were afraid of the reckless, and the reckless were afraid of the reckless. This wild beast puppet was reckless. It didn't even care if its body was damaged. This was something that even the great elder of the Cloud Ink City couldn't do. Therefore, the situation began to change to the wild beast puppet's advantage. "No, we want 3/4. An old voice came from the void. "Okay, 3/4. You have to kill him. If you can't kill him, don't even think about getting what you want." The great elder of the Cloud Ink City bellowed furiously as if he was bargaining. Just at this instant, another large piece of flesh was ripped off from the clone. It seemed that he could recover quickly every time, but it consumed a lot of his life force. It was impossible to revive on the spot without paying a price. Every time a large piece of flesh was scratched off, it was equivalent to consuming hundreds of years of cultivation. Such a loss was so great that he wanted to cry and faint in the toilet. Therefore, deities of the same level rarely fought to the death because such a loss was so great that they couldn't accept it. Yi Shiwen suddenly moved hundreds of miles away vigilantly. Boom! The place where he stood just now had completely turned into nothingness. The space seemed to have been attacked by a terrifying force and was completely crystallized. The whole scene was shocking. Many experts in the distance couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene. There was actually such an expert hidden among them. Many people finally understood why Cloud Ink City was so unyielding this time and wouldn't compromise no matter what. Originally, everyone thought that Cloud Ink City was being careless this time. They didn't expect that there was actually such an expert hidden among them. Moreover, it sounded like there was more than one of them. If that was the case, then perhaps Cloud Ink City might really be able to protect the rock. The void distorted violently, and 5 figures slowly appeared in front of the crowd. Among them, there were 2 men and 2 women. There was also an incomparably huge ferocious beast, the golden-winged sky howling lion. It was another terrifying, ferocious beast bloodline. Of the 2 men, one was an elderly man dressed in black, and the other was a middle-aged man dressed in black. The 2 women were an old woman and a charming young woman. But without exception, all 5 of them exuded an extremely terrifying aura. The pinnacle of the Sage Plane. They were both at the pinnacle of the Sage Plane. Everyone was about to go crazy. Although they had guessed that Cloud Ink City might have found reinforcements, they had never imagined that they would find so many people at the peak of the Sage Plane. Usually, one sage at the pinnacle of the Sage Plane was enough to rule over an area. If two appeared, the force would be considered powerful. But with so many of them appearing, it was simply crazy. No wonder Clouding City is so confident. So it turns out that they've secretly invited so many experts to join them. No wonder. This violet-clothed puppeteer is going to be in big trouble. In an instant, everyone had changed from looking favorably upon Yi Shiwen to looking favorably upon Clouding City. No matter how formidable Yi Shiwen was, he was still far from being able to compare with 5 experts at the pinnacle of the Sage Plane. Moreover, they were able to discern that besides puppets, Yi Shiwen was probably really unable to go against experts at the pinnacle of the Sage Plane. You can't even deal with a junior like this? You're really getting worse and worse. The old woman held a walking stick in her hand and pointed at Yi Shiwen with a disdainful smile on her face. The old woman's aura was the strongest, or it could be said that it was the one that emanated the most. However, Yi Shiwen felt that the most terrifying amongst them was probably the golden-winged sky howling lion. Although it stood steadily, without moving, it emanated a type of terrifying might. What nonsense are you spouting? So long as I kill him, I'll absolutely not go back on my word for 3/4 of the rock's blood essence. The Grand Elder of Cloud Ink City grunted coldly, but he was unable to say anything. Even if he said that this kid was cunning and difficult to deal with, no one would believe him, and it would only be taken as an excuse. That's good. The old woman looked at Yi Shiwen greedily, as if she was looking at a peerless treasure. Old witch, it's not too late for you to retreat now. It's not your fault that you're ugly, but it's your problem that you came out to scare others. Yi Shiwen didn't panic, and he spoke casually instead. However, what he said caused the old woman to fly into a rage. Her face was already covered in wrinkles, so when she flew into a rage now, it was even more unsightly to the extreme. What did you say? The old woman instantly pointed her crutch at Yi Shiwen, and a frightening black gas violently shot out. It grew bigger and bigger, just like a pillar of gas, and directly blasted towards Yi Shiwen. It passed through Yi Shiwen's body, but failed to injure him. The old woman flew into a rage. Ever since she started cultivating, she had never encountered such humiliation. Although she was naturally very ugly, she had a powerful cultivation, and there were many people who were willing to flatter her. She had at least 8,000 male pets, if not 10,000, especially when she had cultivated to the peak of the Sage Realm. No one dared to call her an old witch to her face, let alone say that she was ugly so directly. She had been flattered to the point that she didn't bother to transform into a beauty, and she even somewhat forgot that she was actually extremely ugly. Now that Yi Shiwen had torn open her bloody wound, she was extremely angry. Hee little brother, if you don't like this ugly monster, why don't you come with me? You are so handsome. I will definitely take good care of you. The charming woman giggled. Her huge breasts trembled unceasingly. It was as if she had some sort of magical power, causing many of the men present to gulp down a mouthful of saliva. Only then did they realize that they seemed to have fallen under the charm technique. Otherwise, with the status of these people, it could be said that each of them was a prominent figure in a region, and they had seen all kinds of women. How could it be so easy for them to have feelings for each other? However, this charm technique had no effect on Yi Shiwen. His eyes were cold, and there were no ripples in them. This level of mental interference was not able to move him at all. What did you say? The crone suddenly flew into a rage, and she almost started fighting with the charming woman. She was born extremely ugly, so she hated these gorgeous women the most. In her life, she had lost count of how many little vixens she had killed in her eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that the charming woman's strength was not inferior to hers, she would have crushed this vixen to death right there and then. What are you arguing about? Kill this guy first. Getting the Kunping blood essence is the way to go. Do you want to wait until the others rush over and fight with them for it? At that moment, the golden-winged sky howling lion spoke. As soon as it spoke, all 4 of them quieted down. It was obvious that among the 4, this golden-winged sky howling lion was the strongest. All right, let me do it. I'm going to break this brat's head. The crone roared and suddenly attacked Yi Shiwen. For her, Yi Shiwen had already touched her bottom line, and she could not tolerate it. The peak of the Sage Realm was the peak of the Sage Realm, and her dignity could not be violated. The crutch in the crone's hand instantly rushed over, turning into a black snake, directly pointing at Yi Shiwen at extreme speed. The crutch was no ordinary item either. It was a dusk snake with the bloodline of a primordial beast that she had slain. Its cultivation base had already reached an extremely high level, but he had killed it and refined it into a high-grade god weapon, granting it boundless power. The mysterious snake opened its bloody mouth, wanting to swallow Yi Shiwen. Clang! A blood-colored sword aura shot out from Yi Shiwen's hand, breaking through the air. The world shook violently. The mysterious snake was destroyed in an instant, and the blood-colored sword aura did not stop at all, directly striking at the crone. Clang! The crone raised her crutch and barely managed to disperse the sword aura, but she was also frightened to the point of breaking out in a cold sweat. This sword chi was simply unreasonably strong. It was actually able to completely break through her attack. Although she did not use her full strength just now, even so, with her strength, her attack was actually broken by an imperishable realm expert. It was simply inconceivable. After all, there was an entire realm difference between them. They did not notice that Yi Shiwen's whole arm was also trembling. This sword aura naturally did not appear out of thin air, but the sword aura of the Sword of Avicii. He was currently far from being able to completely control the Sword of Avicii, but he came up with another way. He used Tianyuan Mirror to extract the sword will of the Sword of Avicii and then burst it out. In this way, the power of the Sword of Avicii would be a lot less, but it would not be too much after one attack. But similarly, the sword aura of the Sword of Avicii passed through his body, causing great damage to the body. If it were an ordinary peak of the Eternal Realm, the sword aura of this sword would be enough to directly blow up his arm into a bloody mist. Not to mention using it for a long time. Only Yi Shiwen, who relied on the Gilded Tyrant form and the Phoenix regeneration technique, dared to use it, but the effect was amazing. It was a fatal threat to the invincible masters at the peak of the Sage Realm. If the crone had not reacted in time, it was likely that she would have been cut in half by the sword aura of the Sword of Avicii. It was already far beyond the power of ordinary top-grade divine weapons, and even the Dharma Roulette could not compare to the Sword of Avicii. Chapter 2540. Yi Shiwen didn't doubt that he could seriously injure or even kill one of them if he used the Infinite Pain Sword's main body. However, that would consume too much of his energy. After all, there were 5 of them. It wasn't as simple as just one. As such, he chose to only guide the sword chi to fight. However, that attack had injured his meridians. The sword chi of the Sword of Avicii was too overbearing. However, if it was not overbearing, it would not have been able to pose a threat to someone at the peak of the Sage Plane. But after thinking about it again and again, he still chose the sky-splitting sword. It appeared in his hand, and he looked at them coldly. The 5 masters at the peak of the Eternal Realm were not ordinary. In his hand, the only remaining purple lotus flame appeared in his hand, and he swallowed it directly. Boom! His body seemed to be burning with this kind of flame. It seeped out from every pore of his body and burned every cell in his body, wanting to burn his cells alive. Yi Shiwen could only run the Phoenix regeneration technique and observing person scripture to turn the purple lotus flame into energy. Otherwise, although the cost of using the Sword of Avicii was much lower than the Sword of Avicii, it was not enough to fight for a long time. The purple lotus flame was extremely precious and hard to come by. Yi Shiwen did not want to use it like this, but at this time, he had no other choice. Do you think that you can defeat me just because you are at the peak of the Sage Realm? Let's fight together. Don't waste time. On Yi Shiwen's body, a seal word suddenly appeared, forcibly sealing the energy of the purple lotus flame in his body, so that it would not leak out. Yi Shiwen did not look like he was splashing fire everywhere. Arrogant, if I want to deal with you, I alone am enough, the old woman shouted. Just now, she was caught off guard by Yi Shiwen's Sword of Avicii. In her opinion, she was tricked. How could she let it go? Then let's try. Yi Shiwen sneered. His body moved, and above the sky, Tianyuan mirror flew out, and the sword of Avicii spread out from it, spreading in all directions. The terrifying sword Qi was about to turn the world into a hell of Avicii. The wind blew, and it seemed that everyone could see a hell slowly rising from the ground. Everyone could see countless people howling in pain in hell. They kept screaming in pain, trying to break free, but they were trapped within. This was the projection of an entire plane, and its power seemed to surpass that of an ordinary divine kingdom. Within Inkcloud City, countless ancient barriers and formations were recovering, yet they were instantly obliterated by the Avicii sword Qi, and it could be said to have suffered heavy losses. Everyone retreated again and again, retreating over 1,000 miles in a row. They didn't dare to get any closer. In a battle like this, even if they were 1,000 miles away, it wouldn't be safe, not to mention that the Avicii hell was still spreading. A flame seemed to be flickering in Yi Shiwen's eyes. He didn't even need to stimulate the Avicii sword. After all, the Avicii sword itself was enough to create such an amazing phenomenon as long as he didn't suppress it. The old woman's expression immediately changed. This was an astonishing amount of sword Qi. Just now, she had only encountered one of them, and she was already in a miserable state. Now, there were so many of them. What kind of treasured sword is sealed in his body? The old woman's voice trembled a little. She wasn't frightened by Yi Shiwen, but by the Avicii sword on his body. At this point, perhaps everyone knew that Yi Shiwen had a treasured sword on him. Just the sword Qi alone was already so amazing. If the real body came, wouldn't he be able to slash them to death? Many people couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva as they looked at the boundless Avicii hell that was descending. The world seemed to be destroyed, and the infinite power was boiling. Countless Avicii sword Qi transformed into the Avicii hell, creating a shocking scene. The old woman had never seen such a terrifying and amazing magic weapon. It was already beyond her understanding. Boom! She almost felt that the world was collapsing, and the infinite and violent power was suppressing her, making her body unable to move. It seemed as if her whole body was being crushed by the Avicii sword Qi. Clang! Yi Shiwen's momentum was brewing to the extreme, and he finally made his move. A long roar sounded in the sky, like thousands of heavenly dragons roaring together, and the sword light swept down. The blood-colored sword Qi brought a blood-colored beam of light in the sky through the sky-splitting sword. It slashed down hard, cutting the world into two halves, tilting to both sides. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked and could not believe it. Everyone's hearts stopped beating. They seemed to know that they might be witnessing history today. No one had ever been able to do it. An imperishable realm cultivator killing a sage realm cultivator at the peak. Such a battle record seemed to be back in the mythological era. All of a sudden, the battle seemed to have turned around. The world roared under this power, and even the old woman felt how terrifying that sword Qi was. It was enough to pose a fatal threat to her. She roared, "Don't be too arrogant, kid. Do you really think that's all I have?" Countless black auras surged from the old woman's body, directly turning into a pitch-black, mysterious snake, wrapping her in it. It was as if an ancient beast had been resurrected in the sky. Moreover, it was not an illusion, but a physical one. Many people were shocked. This old granny actually refined even the flesh of an ancient vicious beast. This kind of ferocious beast was the most difficult to refine. It had a powerful bloodline. Even if it was defeated, it was not impossible to refine it into a magic tool. But to refine its body to this state, it was indeed very few people could do it. How many years had this old woman refined it? It might have been more than 100,000 years to be able to do this. Break for me! The Xian snake wrapped around the old woman and charged forward, intending to fight against the blood-colored sword Qi. Boom! This was the most shocking collision. The mysterious serpent's body was already unbelievably strong, and after 100,000 years of refinement, it had reached great heights. Endless energy spread out, forming a terrifying energy storm. God knew how many barriers and matrices were destroyed. If this continued, the entire Cloud Ink City would definitely be reduced to ashes. There was no other possibility. Yi Shiwen was not surprised. Even he had such a means, let alone the old woman, who had cultivated to the peak of the sage realm. How could she not have some trump cards? The collision between the two sides was simply a lose-lose situation. Yi Shiwen's sword chi collapsed inch by inch, but cracks also appeared on the body of the mysterious snake. The old woman's eyes were wide open. How long had she refined the mysterious snake to be able to have such power? Yet, it was actually cracked by a single sword strike. Little B asterisk starred, "I want you dead." The old woman's eyes were about to shed tears of blood. In order to deal with a junior, she had paid such a high price, which was something she had not expected. The mysterious snake was in the air like a dragon. It let out a loud roar and pounced on Yi Shiwen. "Again," Yi Shiwen said coldly, dragging the sky-breaking sword. He knew best that a crack had also appeared on the sky-breaking sword. The quality of the sky-breaking sword was almost comparable to that of a top-grade divine artifact, but it was already very difficult for it to withstand the Avicii sword chi. Such a collision was enough to damage it. If this continued, Yi Shiwen was afraid that the sky-breaking sword would disintegrate on its own after the battle. However, he did not have much time to think at that moment. If he did not kill these people, it would be a delusion to want to take the Kunping away. The massive amount of magical power in his body had been replenished by the purple lotus flame in an instant. Without the purple lotus flame to replenish it, he would not have dared to fight like this. Clang! Another shocking blood-colored sword chi slashed horizontally in the air, slashing at the mysterious snake that was pouncing on him. Rumble! The collision between the two sides was even more shocking than before, and the power was also greater. There was a moment of silence. Wherever the energy passed, space was shattered, and even sound could not be transmitted. Then, everyone heard Mysterious Snake roar angrily. There was a huge crack on his body, and blood kept spurting out. It was obvious that he had suffered a great loss in the collision. On the other side, Yi Shiwen was not much better off. He was directly sent flying. He was able to fight against the peak of the Sage Realm only because of the Avicii sword chi. He had not reached that level yet, so he was at a disadvantage. However, he did not suffer much. After all, his physical body that was comparable to a top-grade divine artifact was not to be trifled with. Again, Yi Shiwen let out another long and loud roar. It sounded like the roar of a heavenly dragon, and the blood-red sword chi shot out. The might of the sword chi had reached a terrifying extent under the enhancement of the Avicii Hell. It was only a projection, but it had already affected the world here. Bang! Yi Shiwen was quick to react. Light wings unfolded behind him and ruthlessly hacked at Mysterious Snake's body. This time, Mysterious Snake let out a blood-curdling scream as he was sent flying. He had relied on his own body to resist the Avicii sword chi's invasion. Even Yi Shiwen's body couldn't withstand the Avicii sword chi, let alone him. Again! Bang! Again! Bang! Yi Shiwen kept slashing at the blood-colored sword chi. In an instant, he had slashed out hundreds of times, and the mysterious snake was directly sent flying. Boom! With a loud sound, the mysterious snake, which had been extremely ferocious just a moment ago, was now screaming in pain. Its physical body was blown into powder in the air, revealing the old woman's body. At that moment, the old woman's face was already pale. She had never expected Yi Shiwen to be able to split her mysterious snake apart. He was a monster. Even when she fought with experts at the peak of the Sage Realm, no one could do this. Moreover, the mysterious snake was closely related to her life. When the mysterious snake was destroyed, she was also seriously injured. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.